That is a brand new one.
Brand new cord.
Yeah.
If they don't have a reset on them?
Do you want me to?
Oh, yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Oh,
Yes.
Trust the electrician.
That's why we need the electrician here.
How's it
There we
working?
go.
Why, well.
If it's not a bright red button on the top of the
Can you
strip.
see it? But no, it's not. This one's hidden on the side.
Yeah.
That's why it confuses people.
Have a couple quick updates to get at the meeting.
Oh, okay. At the end?
At the beginning, while you're still listening. At the end, you're just gonna fade out. This is just quick. Some positive stuff.
Well, Sarah Black.
Hello, I'm here.
I think-
Twins.
Here comes Patricia, I think.
Isn't that funny? Yeah. This is, and we are live. First time.
Must be polka dot day.
Yes. We're just talking about poking. Oh, a friend of mine has like 5 little girls. And do they poke them? She's like, yeah, they're okay. So.
Well, polka your eyes out.
I had to teach my wife to polka. And I said, and you're Polish, you know, she's half Polish.
Your wife is?
But they never went to dances or anything when she was young, you know. So now she really likes it.
We are live. She's ready.
Oh, it's time. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance and moment of silence. I
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Answerby,
Here.
Commissioner Rushton,
Present.
Chairman Bunnick,
Here.
Commissioner Wessel,
Here.
Commissioner Solis Little,
Here.
Commissioner Rattenbach,
Here.
Commissioner Lautner.
Present.
Commissioner Solis was, oh, there she's better. She was barely here. It just. So then that would bring us to public comment. If there's any public comment, please call in. The number's 231-256-8109. 231-256-8109. While we're waiting, we have a comment from the administrator.
Yeah, just a couple of quick updates. One, you probably saw the email from Michelle. We need to take a break at 10:30 because the courts are using the Polycom system for re-hearing. It should hopefully be fairly quick. So we will take a break at 10:30. And Commissioner Wessel commented to bring us donuts for the break. And Commissioner Haynes already brought us cookies for the break. So you can have one of both if you like. Speaking of that, we did order the Polycom system. Fortunately, we got the price under that amount. And the stands and everything was included. We've got separate vendors, but it's all been ordered. And just got email, at least the stand and some stuff will be shipped first part of next week. And on the Polycom, do you know when that will be shipped?
Still waiting.
Okay, but it's from Grand Rapids, so it should be fairly quick. So that's good. Got email late yesterday afternoon. As you know, we've been in the court case with Nordport resident, Mr. Wyszynski, over a tree fort that he's had there for years. It was a dispute actually between the township and the association, but it was in federal court. The judge referred it to the magistrate to try to come up with a resolution, and she issued an order yesterday afternoon, 26 pages long, urging the federal court to dismiss all charges against us. Now that he can challenge
Just us or everybody?
against Leelanau County.
Okay.
There's separate issues there, so, but that's very good news. We thought it was baseless to begin with. And we were actually a minor player, that his major dispute was with the township and the homeowner association. And we, from the very beginning, said we should not even be included in the lawsuit. So it's the magistrate recommendation to the federal judge, and Judge Neff looked at that, And he, of course, he could challenge that, but it was a very clear decision, dismissing all charges against us. We did submit the hazard pay application yesterday and got notified that they received it, and they will notify us in the near future our status. And also, today at 12:30, the state has assigned a liaison to work with me on the other part of the federal grant, the Community Development Block Grant. And so we're having a telephone conference call at 12:30. There's one individual assigned to each of the counties that are participating, so hopefully they'll get more information on what is eligible and what's not eligible for that. So that's a positive development. And also, I was informed that the Deputies Union will be voting on our labor contract Monday. So hopefully we can get beyond that and that'll be resolved. If that's the case, then the legal counsel will draft up the contracts for both sides and sign it since you already have approved it. So just a few updates there. I thought
That's
you
if
would
they
know.
accept it.
If it's accepted, yes.
Yeah.
The union representative is recommending that they accept it. But obviously it's up to the board of members. So just a few, I thought positive updates that you should know about.
And hearing then no public comment, we'll move on to the action items of the department's request for the sheriff's office.
Morning, everybody.
Good evening, Sheriff.
Under Sheriff Morgan and Lieutenant Roush are here to answer specifics regarding the budget and the corrections operations. There's a request on there for video cams, and I didn't want to jump into that turf. Todd is much more astute in knowledge as far as the video performance, so I am ready when you are.
How about we go in order here?
Okay?
Here's-
Thank you. Just go down. Sure. General Fund, Sheriff's Marine Division. Sheriff's requesting Board of Commissioners. Well, do you want me to read each one, or you have them in front of you?
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. Okay. So we've not heard back from the feds on the grant yet. The grant status here would be the county to request a 1/4 match grant. If we get the 3/4 of federal funding, we don't know if we'll get it. We're in year 5 of the process, and we're still relying on that. We had contacted them as recently as Wednesday, and there was a specialized training that Paul Rabori went to via Zoom or internet, whatever you want to call it, and basically talked to them about grant writing processes and how you go forward with these. Their status was that we're still in the process. There's 3 major processes. 1, did you fill out the forms correctly? 2, do you qualify as an agency? And 3, get down to tax, who needs it more than who? In the past, some of the places like in Chicago or Detroit, some of the major metropolitan areas get multiple opportunities at this and fill the grants, get the boats. So in our particular case, we're still waiting, and we're still hoping to get that. So that would save the county, obviously, 3/4 the cost of that boat. I don't think I need to go any more than say, look at that picture right behind you, how much water we're surrounded by in Lake Michigan. 2,032 surface miles of Lake Michigan water we cover, in addition to inland lakes. This boat and this request is not for inland lakes. This, just as stated before, is going to be for Great Lakes Patrol. It'll be based out of Leland. Harbor Master and I have a great relationship. The township board over there has been great in Leland. They support us, and basically we're going to provide a boat slip for us to keep there. So we've had multiple rescue situations this summer. We've had a B&E in South Fox Island. We had potential plane crasher out there. We had boats that ran out of gas, boats that had fires, people in the water, and a boat sinking. So that's all already this summer. We even had a call last night in Northport while I was at the Pittsburghers game. So that said, there's a definite need for a Great Lakes class boat when the water's calm. It's not an issue to use a 25-footer we have. However, most of you have been on that boat and you've not been out in bad waves. We've been very fortunate. You've not been out and had the pounding. There's 2 seats for the operator and the captain there. There's 2 seats that are not shock mitigated, and then that's it. You sit on a little tiny little wedge and you basically bounce in the waves. And when we rescue people, go out. So I don't think I need to belabor it. You've supported it in the past. multiple times. I appreciate your support. I'm just saying we haven't heard back in the grant yet, so from my perspective, we wait until later to deal with it.
Commissioner Ansel.
This is kind of towards the money people here. Typically for these grant projects, do we put it in the budget or do we not put it in the budget? When,
Not.
you know, yeah, okay. So we just, if it comes through, then we address it when we actually get the grant.
Correct, so he's applied for the grant.
Right.
And he gets a letter that says it's approved, then he comes back to you to ask you if you're going to co-partner with the grant to purchase it.
Right.
You front the money, you have to create a revenue and expense.
Okay. I'm just, the procedures, we're probably not going to put it in the budget, but we have to have it on the radar.
Right.
When we're discussing budget, because if you get it, obviously it's a big ticket item and we gotta
Right.
make sure we got the money to pay for everything that we want
Right.
to do.
Right, that's kind of what I think, it's, be aware that it's in process, we hope we get it, fingers crossed, toes crossed, hopefully we get it.
Now, the last couple of years, you have been notified in September. Is that
Yes,
still the
that is
schedule?
correct. They originally told us early this year, we might know as early as the end of June, but
Yeah, just in the past years, it's always been middle of
Exactly.
September, middle to end of September,
Yeah.
I think, so.
I think the reason they tell you, we'll let you know in June, sometimes a lot of people are dropped out in the first phase of process. They didn't do something mechanically right. I was told by one of the grant reviewers that our application is spot on, it's excellent. He went on and on to say other agencies should look to you guys to how to write the grant because we're writing it the right way. Their big concern is, to what point does Homeland Security give a boat here? And remember, there's $100 million every year in this account. May dry up next year, we don't know, but there's $100 million every year. It's gonna go somewhere. And many of these agencies have had maybe 6 or 8 boats, and it's frustrating to me that I would think you'd spread it out a little bit more, but we do rely on that formula. And that's why if we make it through June, then we're into August. It's actually a good sign that they haven't notified us yet, so.
Well, and I guess you be aware that if with the grant is allowed and we have to come up with the 400 and whatever
The whole
thousand.
amount.
Right. It's not the 118. We have to pay that, then wait for them to reimburse us.
Yes, and from what I'm hearing, the reimbursement process, although some government processes are slow, it's pretty quick. It's pretty quick turnaround, so, yep.
Just so we know. Isn't that correct?
Yes. I think part of our challenge may be just where we're located.
Yeah, exactly
There's a Port
right.
Authority grant, right?
Exactly right,
So I
that's
think
correct.
that Probably is your biggest challenge right there.
Yep, what's in our favor is we have Great Lakes inner and outer shipping channels where there's a lot of international trade. We have the islands, we have all this stuff going back with Mackinac and, Mackinac Island races, Chicago races and all that. Plus, we have an active, vulnerability with these boats. We have these tour boats going on the island, 50, 60, 100 people on them, whatever it is. And they're really kind of vulnerable situation there. You just can't pull a patrol car up to it, right? So there's a lot of parameters. There's fingers crossed that we get it and we'll go from there if we don't.
I'm good on this piece for now.
Right, well, the only thing I'd say is, at least I talked about, and I think the rest of the board was on board with this, is that we know that our boats have to be replaced. But I didn't see anything to put money in capital outlay for future boats. So you're only talking about this one and you're not worried about any other boats being replaced?
The other boats are aged. I provided earlier this year, in fact, each year I provided you with the age of the boats and where we're
Right.
going, and you're exactly right, Commissioner. So our newest boat is 10 years old, and there's wear and tear. There's been a lot of towing in the back times, and there's still some towing now where it's very hard on those engines. Engines, a boat engine, kind of set up to go fast or to tow, kind of a diesel thing in a pickup truck or gas engine. But what's happening in a lot of situations, we get stuck in odd situations like clearing trees that have fallen out of channels or something, try to move them out when there's nobody commercial available. So it is tough on them. And I would throw this out there to you as well. Maybe we should look at it in different context. If we don't get this grant this year or in year 5, maybe I should approach the board every year and ask for $100,000 as an annual fund till we can catch up on things. And we would build up an account as we have to replace a Boston whaler or as we have to replace a boat, we'd have an account to work out of. and then we could sort of mitigate, like a car, there comes a point where repairing a boat is expensive like a car, you know, you're putting money into a dead horse. So maybe that's something, and I understand totally what you're saying, then it's county, we're not tied to the feds at all or anything, then it's county, and you make those decisions. But the last boat you purchased as a boat, some of you, none of you here, was 1972, Vietnam War was on. This last time county bought a boat. So, you know, we're going to, as you say, we're gonna have an attrition with the boats, we're gonna have a wear and tear factor. So I'm really hoping we get this grant now, because then we can focus on individual things like replace a motor, replace a hull as it comes up. But if we need to get a larger, more holistic look at it, maybe we do need an account of, you know, maybe it's $100,000 a year. I don't know. We have to take a look at it, what it's gonna come up to, but.
Actually, the sheriff and I talked yesterday about this. And we actually had the same discussion that you brought up, is maybe we should set up a special restricted boat fund that you put X dollars in every year that stays in that fund. So it's not a big hit all at once and it's spread out over a number of years.
Right.
Commissioner Lott.
Well, that's what, I was just thinking, to replace your patrol cars, we have a motor pool fund.
Right.
So based on miles driven by those cars. So how do you rate with boats? Is it hours or?
It goes by hours, and a lot goes on wear and tear too, because where a car, we generally know you're gonna get 100,000 miles out of a car, and after that, you start weighing and balancing, you get closer to 200,000. With a boat, it's not as simple as a car. We go by mileage, you go by hours. In general, like the hulls stay pretty good shape. For the most part, you know, our Boston Whalers have worked very, very well for us. We have 15 and 17. We use those. I know Commander Robori yesterday was on Glen Lake with it. He and I were on a rescue call earlier in the week. There's a lot of things you use it for. You never know what it is, like people backing their boats into the Lake Leelanau Narrows. And that truck is underwater. And, you know, what do you do with your boat? What do you do? Well, we're obviously not going to pull it out with that. Bingham Tow 'em got it, but there's a lot of odd things we deal with. Last night, like I say, the call came in about 8:30, 9 o'clock on a potential emergency in Northport. So I can't give you an actual, but I can tell you that if we can replace a motor and use the hull, we will. We're going to be very conservative with it. If we get in a situation where, you know, we got to replace the motor, we got to replace the motor. So I'm not one that feels like our boats all have to be shiny and new. As long as they function, they're working, they're safe. That's the whole impetus with the Great Lakes boat. We do not have a safe platform to work out of Great Lakes water for that. Coast Guard, other professional agencies, other sheriff's offices, state police, they don't use anything like that patrol boat we have in Leland. It's a modified fishing boat, and it was the best they could come up with at the time, but I think we're past that. So a little bit vague, but I'll be honest with you if you ask.
Well, I guess I was thinking more about it being just in capital outlay. We set
Sure.
aside, let's say, if you were saying you only want 3 vehicles instead of 4 this year, you know, and so that 36,000 could be set aside in capital outlay, and the idea is to set it aside for future boats. Say every 30 years you replace a boat, you know, or every 20 years, you know, you're gonna replace a motor or whatever, and then the money's in capital outlay. The idea is that we're going to do that. Or I guess my question is, do you have enough money in your budget that if a motor goes bad, you can replace it or fix it?
We're always on the edge, honestly. Depends how many rescue calls we get. It depends how many repairs they have to put in. To, you know, boats, Commander Robori got into a couple of our boats and it was just spaghetti as far as wiring. He took it all apart, wired everything, labeled, marked all the cables. He did that for DNR for years. Got everything up and running, and basically we have a lot of older equipment. So a capital outlay would work. I just couldn't honestly tell you we need this amount of money. I could suggest this, or as like, you know, like this Great Lakes patrol boat, you basically are gonna have 25 or more years service life out of that boat. Something could happen anytime, can't predict that, but basically, you know, you've made that investment into a platform that's gonna last. Unlike a car, where you're gonna drive the car 3 or 4 years, you get to 120 some thousand, and you're gonna flip it. And luckily, we've been flipping them for pretty good money for the county, able to use them for building codes and so forth. So I'm not against that whatsoever, but I think as a starting point, we definitely need a Great Lakes class patrol boat, or you know, emergency response and patrol boat. Then from there, we can, you know, piecemeal things and look at a budget. So
I mean, I guess that's what, if they want to start a separate boat account, I don't know, but one or the other, I just think we need to work toward something that's set up for the Marine Patrol.
Sure.
So that, you know, even if whether we get this grant or not, there's something set aside.
Right.
Whether it's capital outlay or whether it's a boat, pool, something like that we do. I mean, I don't know which would be better.
Would this be an appropriate time to do that? I mean, is this
That's what
a,
I think, Commissioner answer.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I really think we should approach this in a systematic manner, have it in the capital improvement plan, just like anything else. And, yes, you can't predict, but I'm sure there's some history out there in the industry that says, okay, we can expect this motor to last this long.
right?
On average. You might be on the short side, you might be on the long side, but if if somebody can look at that and say, okay, this is what we forecast that we're gonna need as far as motors or replace the hulls or, other big ticket items, that's what we're talking about here.
Right.
Not, I need a new life vest or
Right.
something like that. But, and just plan for it, to say, okay, every year we anticipate that we're gonna have, on average, boat lasts, let's just pick a number, 20 years, let's just say.
Sure.
Okay, we boats that are over 20 years, we know we're gonna have to replace them. So we should be setting money aside in the capital improvement plan for that. And just do that every year, just like we do for buildings or anything else.
And then I could maybe reapproach the board at a later date and lower the amount. For
Well-
instance, let's just say, just numbers, we'll put $100,000 in it this year. And the grant comes in, doesn't, we get match grant funding or something, and maybe in 2 years from now, we realize that's too much, we don't need that much, we're not breaking boats, we're not replacing hulls. Can we then maybe lower that, and lower it till we find that point where we're breaking even, so to speak? Or if we break a motor, we don't have to come to the board and say, I need 13,000 for a motor, we've got a fund to work with, like you're saying, long term.
Exactly.
So I could lower that.
Set aside, and.
Yes,
Yeah, at some point in time, it's just like anything else. If we have, if we're lucky, or our employees are careful with the equipment or whatever, and it lasts longer, yeah, you got more money, you just say, okay, we don't need to
We
put
don't
that
need as
extra
much.
money in this year because the fund is at a high enough level that if something happens, we got the money set aside. It's just like budgeting at home,
Sure.
you set money aside for the new car, or you set money aside for
Right.
the mortgage or whatever. We should do the same thing. And, I would hope that, we would have some people that could look into that and say, this is the history for, the industry as a whole, that a boat hull lasts this long, a motor lasts this long.
right,
So that we can say, okay, we need to set for the next, looking ahead,
Right.
5 years or whatever.
right,
We need to set aside this amount of money every year. I don't know what the number is. Maybe it's 100,000, maybe it's 50,000, I don't know. But, that we are doing that, so
Right.
when we do have that motor quit, we got the money there. Or at least
that works
planning
great
it.
for me. And if we front load that, just like you do an account, we front load that. And then we get to that point where the Great Lakes Patrol boat, and again, I'm working on some private funding sources as well, can be blended in that account because we have that account. And then we say from now, yeah, we start out with 100,000 for a couple of years. We're at this plateau, this level, we replace this. We got a Great Lakes boat, we really only need 10,000 this year toward that account, toward the long-term amortization and
Make the
Right,
adjustment based
right,
on actual
right.
things that happen, but you plan for.
you plan
the
for
average.
larger, sure. That would work for me, and if we can do that today, that's great, it's established.
Yeah, but we don't know the numbers, this is the problem.
Yeah, well, Jenny, you had your hand up?
That's okay.
Well-
I just wanted to let you know how typically this has gone. Typically, when you purchase a boat, you have marine grants. They're written at the state level, I believe. Charlie was a great guy for finding those grants and getting us boats in that realm. I know like when Peachy asked for inventory and looking at that kind of thing, that's where we go. We do not, nor have we ever had a capital outlay where we would plan for money set aside for a boat. When there are large expenses for motors, the sheriff does not come to you, we fix the boat. It's in his budget, and if he goes over his budget for an X amount like a repair like that, it's moved in from contingency because your boat must operate. It's not like the motor pool where there's a funding unit for it. Typically, if you're gonna purchase a boat, you have your contingency line item, which is up over 400,000 that you would use, or you would use revenue that you already have uncommitted. In essence, when your taxes are at 10 million and 10.3 come in, that kind of thing. So I know it is your decision to set aside a capital improvement for a boat, but that would not be typically something we would save for.
We haven't in the past.
You've had, correct. We don't put money in the motor pool for the future.
Commissioner Locke.
Okay, so that is absolutely correct. We just have never done that. But we have also never put them on a schedule. And I don't understand boats enough to know why we wouldn't, because some of this makes sense, what you're saying. Motors and
Yes.
and hose and just maintenance, okay? To back up, you said in the past, the lakes are a mandate for you to,
Yeah, the sheriff covers the county. The bottom lands are owned by the state of Michigan. Army Corps of Engineers takes care of like dredging and buoys and things like that. The rescues are shared responsibility, and the sheriff is one of the ones with shared responsibility. U.S. Coast Guard covers it, Michigan State Police covers it, and Sheriff's Office covers it, and Department of Natural Resources. Everybody has their different functions. There's a commercial fish boat based out of Leeland, but that's specifically for tribal issues and commercial fish, Great Lakes invasive species, and so forth. We are the go-to agency. Coast Guard makes a decision. I don't know how many thousands of dollars it is an hour to get that helicopter up off the ground, but it's a lot of money to get it up and go out on rescues. They're stations. We're not blessed to have a station here. They're down in Manistee for the year round, and you have in Frankfurt, you have a detachment in the summertime, and then you have Charlevoix. We have a lot of vacant and blank water. We have a lot of responsibilities that we're dealing with out of busy ports like Leland and all along our, especially Great Lakes west side coast. We're the go-to agency for that. I'm just telling you, if you go out and you see, like the call last night came right here. And it is something that, when I say we're the go-to agency, when that boat or that truck backed that boat in the water in the Narrows yesterday, it was our deputies there on that scene doing the report involving the towing, and as we are with car accidents. Yes, the state police are here, who handled the fatals here and there, who's at these accidents day to day. The simple math is we have this many deputies in yellow handling accidents day to day, and there's one trooper in the county. So in realistic terms, all agencies work together, but we have a huge responsibility for it. So yes, it is. And don't forget, we have 4 islands, 2 of which are populated, 2 of which seasonally populated. We had a plane situation, they thought it crashed on North Fox Island, and then the next day we had a B&E in South Fox Island. Stuff happens that we have to attend to out there, and that's not something that DNR goes out and writes a B&E report. They may go out on a search and rescue operation, but we're the primary agency that does that. We're the ones that have the dispatch center here.
Yeah, and just to clarify that, from a legal perspective, you asked, and I'm sure the sheriff's saying is correct, there is no legal mandate though, because remember we checked our law firm
can't
several years.
remember about that.
Yeah, several years. There's no legal mandate that we have to do this. However, it's a partnership with all the agencies.
But if
What-
you have a private residence on South Fox,
Correct?
okay, and it's broke into, who do they call?
Us?
Who's
And we,
responsible?
and we have the legal mandate. We have 4 islands, and those islands,
But-
correct. But how do you get to the
How do
islands?
you get-
Yeah, and how do you get to the rescues? So, it's semantics in a way, but that's Leelanau County to the midline of the lake, halfway up to Beaver Island and across West Bay. Half of West Bay is ours. So it's all Great Lakes waters. I'm not as concerned with the size class boats we have for our operations out of Greilickville all the way up to pretty much north of Omena. You start getting into Northport, you're into big open lake water. It changes instantly. We've got tribal fishermen out there. We have commercial fishermen out there. We have, such as, out of Leland. We have sport fishermen out there. We have all kinds of boaters. We have sailors. So once you start getting in those waters, generally you don't have problems on days that are calm. And then you have, of course, the never-ending, if you will, plague of kayaks trying to paddle out to North and South Manitou Island. They get trapped out there. They get caught in bad waves. We find boats floating in lakes. They're unregistered watercraft. We don't know if someone fell off and drowned or if the boat blew offshore. So we're constantly going out jeopardizing our deputies in bad waters to find out and do rescues. So we are the primary agency.
Commissioner West.
I guess my question was, you know, before we implemented the vehicle program, what did the county do when it came time to buy new cars?
Came right from the sheriff's budget.
Pardon me?
There was no motor pool, it came right from the sheriff's budget. So
Okay.
when a car was purchased, it came right from the sheriff's budget. The cars purchased years ago were in the $20,000 range. Now we're 36 to 38.
34.
Yeah, 34 to 36,000 a year, so, the motor pool basically brings in the funds from all the vehicles in the departments. So it's not just the sheriff, it's secondary road, you know, they're each, you know, the separate departments.
I'm like Tony, I think we should have a systematic program where, you know, our dollars are set aside for those future anticipated needs when it comes to large purchases like our boats and or repairs, because it can be costly, and if we're not prepared to put those dollars forth for whatever reason, we find ourselves behind the 8 ball and not being able to provide the necessary equipment for that department to fulfill their mandate.
So Jen, just to clarify, I'm sure what you're saying is accurate, but because we have never done it, there's no reason it could not be done, right? If the commissioners chose to do that.
Well, I guess my opinion would be there's no way, the board would have to decide to take from the general fund to put into the motor pool, cash for future purchases.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be done though.
I'd have
It
to
should,
check,
but it could be done.
I'd have to check with the audit firm, because you wouldn't designate funds for a possible future. So you would have to have a plan, so the sheriff would have to come up with a plan of the 1980 boat or whatever,
Yeah.
when he plans to
Right.
replace that.
But
You know what I
it's,
mean?
yeah, so if we have a plan, we're gonna replace a boat, a plan that we're gonna, I just make this up, in 2022. Set aside money every year for that thing. I think it would be, just we haven't done it, but I
It's
think.
doable.
I think it could be.
It's doable, but we gotta
And I
dot
think
the i's and
come up
cross
with
the
a
t's,
system. Yes,
so that,
it's a different way of thinking.
right.
Well, and I guess I thought this year would be a good year to do it, because they're requesting only 3 vehicles instead of 4. We take that $34,000 and start that pool for the motor. Yeah, I know we're not gonna take it out of the motor pool thing, that we would have to take it out of the general funds. You know, but it's, you know, it's a start. You know, you say 100,000, I didn't think, you know, I just thought, we're using the money that we're thinking we're gonna do, and we start somewhere. And if we did 34,000 every year, he'd be able to replace a boat every 30 years or something, you know?
Yeah,
At least,
that's a good idea, and I agree 100% with that. The reason I said front load it, I hope you all understand we need a Great Lakes class patrol boat. I hope I don't have to beat that horse anymore.
But I see that as a totally different issue. You know, this is for all the boats we have now.
Yep.
And setting up to replace them, to replace the motors, so that the.
Sure,
It doesn't
sure.
just come out of your budget when you get a new motor that's $3,000.
Sure.
I see the Great Lakes boat as a totally separate issue. It's based on a grant, it's based on if we get the grant, you know, and then we gotta come forward with the $400,000, you know, and then get the reimbursement. So then that would be part of the replacement. Every 30 years, we
Right.
replace that boat, you know, and that's what I'm looking at.
Well, that's workable, and then I would reapproach the board. If this federal grant process is not gonna work with this thing where I'm trying to get private donations, come to the board and say, we need the boat, we need to put the footprint down, so it's separate. But if we set that up, let's just say you put $35,000 in it this year, right now, I think you all know how expensive boat motors are. You know, they can be $10,000, they can be $20,000 a motor, we don't know what's happening, but we're gonna try to keep the hulls as good as possible. But if we started with that, that's a great idea. I have no problem with that. Chet and I discussed that at great length of establishing this account. I don't want to, I guess, mislead the board that this somehow would replace the need for a Great Lakes Patrol boat. It's certainly long-term smart planning. I like the idea we're doing, we set it up. But long-term, as soon as possible, we still need the Great Lakes boat.
If we're gonna have a marine division, we should have a plan for a marine division.
Right.
Period. We're not gonna have a marine division, it's simple.
So it would be very arbitrary and capricious of me just to say it's 36,122. Could we look at this morning in realistic terms and say, what'd you say, Commissioner, what we didn't spend on the patrol car? 35,000, can we start out with
I
35,000?
think when we
How do
get
we
through
do
all
that?
the presentations, all the budgets,
Yeah,
then
we
we'll
got
sit down and look at each cost.
Okay.
So Right now, it's,
I just
Yeah.
can't put a number out there.
Good, well, I don't know the process you follow, but I agree with you, let's start the account, let's do that.
I think it's a very constructive dialogue we had. So next step would be, once we get through all the presentations, we have some more people coming.
Sure.
And we have to take a break at 10:30 for the courts. I want to make sure we keep moving along.
Right, okay.
But could you just give it, because when you applied for the vote, you said you had a private donor that was willing to potentially pay the county's share. Is that still a possibility?
Depends on grants, depends on what people are doing. It's possible to get someone to buy the whole boat for us. It's possible someone will go 50% with the county. I may come to the board someday and say, we have 2 donors that are gonna match 1/2 of the boat costs. Then what a great deal for you if these people are willing to step up. And there's great people out there. We have wonderful people in the community. Saw what happened when Leland needed the dredging tool. They got a dredging barge and they raised almost all the money locally. I'll try to do that the best we can, so.
And I think, we'll let Jen, she can look at how it has to go about and present that to us too, how we do it to get that set up. I think that would be a good way. You don't have to rush, but it's something I think we should start. We've been talking about it ever since you brought up the Great Lakes.
Sure.
You know,
Well, and the other day, a family from the county gave us a check for 5,000 to use as we will for the sheriff's operation budget. We have that account, when we get people willing to donate, we can add to that account and, eventually, take county burden off. In this particular case, we need rifle optics very, very badly for our rifle. We only had about somewhere, I think Steve said around 5,000 available out of our equipment budget. We've kind of been waiting, saving. And so we applied it toward that account so we can go ahead with the rifle purchase, but we'll try to make it work for county's best.
so then I'd like to move on to inmate housing, which would be the next item.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, the request, and Lieutenant Roush, if there's any specific questions, I'll have you answer them.
I think it's pretty simple because you approved this last year.
Yes.
It's in
Second
the
hand,
budget.
right?
Yeah, and I think we all plan on going ahead with
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Is there any questions from anybody?
No,
I don't think we
this
need
is the
to.
second half of that,
Yeah.
what we
That's
started last
correct.
year, and we're just gonna continue on.
Right.
Committed to it.
We're
Right.
committed.
And you all saw what happened to Epstein in jail. Mysteriously, the cameras are down. Mysteriously, there were 2 temporary employees. Mysteriously, they were both sleeping. Whatever happened at that whole event, it sure be nice to pop a video cam up, say, Todd, what happened? And he presents a video and here's exactly what happened, takes all mystery out. So thank you for the support on that. Next item is general fund. Sheriff, we have $10,000 set in to potential training. Now, I'll give you my opinion on that. Take it as you will. We do a tremendous amount of training now. We are aware of all the social factors, all the weapons and emergency vehicle operation factors, the public relations, the verbal judo. We do that stuff now. We put this in here because the impetus of all this stuff and social arrest or social unrest, are we doing enough of that sort of training? I feel we are. We looked at maybe increasing that training fund by $10,000. As you recall, a couple years ago, you took my training budget, which I inherited 8 years ago, which was $7,500, and you doubled it to 15. I think we're close there, maybe a little shy. If you are going to set up the Marine Fund and, put money toward that today, I feel our training is adequate, maybe a slight bump, but we could adjust that in the future. So what I'm saying is that's not my top priority.
Well, the only thing I would say is that if we do get the Great Lakes boat, there is gonna be a cost for training for that. And even though I know the Coast Guard has said they'll train for free, we're still gonna have to pay those guys to go up there for 2 weeks or whatever it is. So I do think the increase in the training budget, the education budget, is gonna have to happen regardless. I mean, if that happens, if you don't use it, that's fine, but
Okay.
I don't want us to, we should have to come back
I'd
later
rather
and
leave it
say,
in there.
Well, if you want to leave it in there, it's good with me, and I will promise you I won't waste it. I will not say, okay, we got a bunch of extra money, let's use it. We'll keep it in there and then account for that, and that'll work. So that's good, we have that buffer, and as those things come up, we'll have it.
I mean, I want people to know that we're for our sheriff's department, that we're not going to defund it in any way. And if, you know, and if they need help with something, we want to help them, to help the people.
I appreciate that, good, I appreciate that.
Well,
So then that would bring us to, what's the next one, the body cameras?
So body cameras, I have one on right now, just for your comfort. I don't usually have it on unless there's an incident. Our policy is that we put them on, we don't have them when we go to the bathroom, we don't have them when we eat lunch, this, that, and the other. But when we go on calls and so forth, we use this as policy. And our body cams are a very older, kind of economy style. Sometimes we're fighting and wrestling with people and they get broken, little pieces. The increase in budget was for $3,000 just toward this. We do feel very strongly, the undersheriff and I specifically have talked with the deputies just recently, be sure to have your body cams on. We've had a few incidents already since all the social unrest began. I trust these police officers, these deputies, this county, I trust them. This is in their favor. A lot of people make it sound like we're gonna make the police wear body cams. Well, thank you for making us. That's like making me eat a steak, thank you. This is good. So the undersheriff thought if we put about $3,000 toward that as these break down, or as we have to slightly upgrade models, this thing has a fairly narrow band on it, and there's issues with the batteries and the charging. And you know as well as I do that you need to have them on, we need to have them on. And if they're full of capacity and they can't tape anymore, or if they're out of battery in the middle of an incident, that's not good either. So that was the idea the undersheriff had, to bump that up 3,000. So for your consideration.
Transfer.
are we actually gonna replace cameras, or is this?
Only as needed. If we break one, replace it, or if a new model comes out and they're $100 more, we'd have an account to work with. Not that we would trade them all, as long as they work, we're happy.
He's got his hand up, I'm trying to.
Recently, these are the original ones we got with help with MMRMA and police grade. And recently, we've had to replace 3 of them because of issues, their aging, whatever. These are the upgraded models. They're more expensive, of course, but they're more robust, longer battery life, wider angle, all that kind of stuff. Only as we need to replace, that's what the money's.
So the additional money is to actually replace cameras that are failing or
Right.
just not working anymore.
But I
or
didn't
broken
want
or
to get
whatever.
caught not being able to fund that.
And that won't go through MMRMA at all, because it's replacements?
Replacement, yeah, the program we had.
Too bad.
Yeah,
MMRMA pays half of that?
No, they did.
They did for the original, but as we replace them, it's full shot to us.
Yeah.
The big question is, why do I have the old model? Why does he have the new model? But we'll get into that later. No, in all seriousness, what did this model cost and what does that model cost?
Well, when we went through MMRMA, we only ended up paying $87 a piece for those. These are $300.
Right. But in essence, these at the time were what, 160? They're 300. So they about doubled in cost. So that's why the change.
You know, it's cheap insurance. It is the cheapest insurance we can buy, I think.
All right, any other questions on that? And then we move on then to the sheriff personnel.
Sheriff personnel, you heard me talk about this. Those of you on the board, back when I took over as sheriff, we do not have daytime sergeant supervision in the field. So I'm tied up with, I deal with the public relations, the media, the little fires that start day to day when you have 40-some employees, the walk-ins, a lot of the mental health issues. I'm dealing with day to day and many, many meetings scheduled, unscheduled. Just as of now, you ask, shut the cameras and phones off and all that. You don't want my radio blaring in here. I'm not available to supervise or call during the day unless it's an emergency. So that said, the undersheriff is in charge of budget and budgetary considerations. He's doing a lot of the grant tracking and programs. For instance, our 416 grant, our secondary road patrol grant, both grants, we work hand in hand. He works with the Marine deputies when they're doing the accounting. So he is the math guy. I'm the PR, deal with the walk-in type person. The Lieutenant Kiesel is dealing with day-to-day scheduling, which is immense with that many employees. He's dealing with the over 100 specialized events we have, and we have individual meetings constantly with, we want to do an M22 challenge run. We want to do, this, that, and the other. So he's constantly got that stuff going on along day-to-day things. He gets sometimes 4 or 5 calls on his days off. sometimes 4 or 5 calls after he's already put in a day. His general work shift, 3 days a week, is from 0800 to 1600, so 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. However, there are times we flex him out and he comes in and works a 7 to 3, or he maybe work a 10 to 6. So his is a little bit movable schedule-wise, but he has responded at all times. And remember, when there's a fatal car accident, it starts a chain of command, and it starts going down and pick out who's authorizing overtime. We're very judicious with overtime. We're not abusing it. And it takes command staff decisions on the spot at the moment. Do this, don't do that. When there's a car chase and it's going on, you have to make command decisions while the chase is going on, not 4 hours later. So this is why we need these sergeants in the field. The sergeants are in the field at night. So we have an AM and PM shift 7 days a week. So AM first half of the week is one shift. We have a night sergeant. The next half of the week, we have a night sergeant. We have nothing during the day. On weekends, we basically have no supervision because I'm off, even though I'm always at meetings. The undersheriff's off. Lieutenant Kiesel gets constant calls back and forth, but he's basically off. He had his hours in during the week. During the week is when most of the administrative stuff is going on. So that said, I would like to see a model, and I provided this, and I just talked to Laurel. She'll get you all a copy of this. This is our organizational chart we came up with about 4 years ago, somewhere around there. To my knowledge, there was never one in existence before, but this basically shows the model. If you look in the correction side where you see this tan color on top followed by yellow, you will basically see 1 sergeant and 3 employees. That sergeant makes the administrative and the, if you will, questionable decisions all day, all night, whatever. On the road side, you see 2 light tan and you see 2 darker tan and nothing. Basically, we don't have any supervision. These are 2 proposed vacancies, which are in front of you right now, where we would not hire new people. What we would do is take 2 of our existing deputies now, and they would become sergeants, and they would work with seniority. The 2 guys on nights now would be high seniority. They'd come to days with all their experience, and the 2 new guys would go to nights. So basically, we'd have 1 sergeant for approximately 3 deputies. And that's the model. If you look at the other corrections agencies around the state of Michigan, you look at the liability with all the things that are happening, we have been very, very fortunate that we've not had all the incidents that you see around the state, paying out all this lawsuits, so forth. I attribute a lot of that to Lieutenant Roush's leadership, as well as his supervisory skills, as well as the fact that we have 1 sergeant per 3. And this is the model I'd like to get over here, 1 sergeant per 3. And in general, on any one given day, we have somewhere between 2 at night if we're short, if someone's on annual leave or sick, minimum 2 by contract, up to 3 people at night. And during the day, we have a minimum of 3 and oftentimes up to 5 because we have a secondary road patrol car, we have a Traverse Narcotics team officer, we have a canine officer. So we are able to cover more during the day when people are more active. I just feel that it's extremely important that we look at this from a standpoint of advanced liability. Put your supervision in place now, make your decisions, follow the form, follow rules, most of all follow policy and procedure. And I feel that having the 2 day sergeants would give us 1 for the first half of the week, 1 for the second half of the week, which now includes weekends. When I say week, I'm talking 7 days. We would have a supervisor on tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, and then Sunday afternoon. We would still have a sergeant person being able to make that decision.
I mean, I guess I look at that, and so between yourself, the undersheriff, and Lieutenant Kiesel, there's no one during the day who can supervise those 2 guys out on road patrol.
We do our best. There's anywhere from 2 to 4 out there. We do our best.
Usually that's gotta be, I mean, I don't know that they need constant supervision. It's probably just a decision if they can't make it themselves. So I just think creating 2 more during the day, we're just getting too top heavy. At least that's the thing that I'm seeing, at least. I mean, I understand in corrections, they're the only 3 people there. You've got a sergeant and the whole thing, and I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this, Commissioner, honestly and openly. We discussed here as friends. If this cost absolutely nothing to do it, would you be for it? So we're only talking $17,000 a year to keep us, I think, out of trouble within specs and P&P, policy and procedure. So is it an issue over the money? Because I can control that, that's the union. But what I'm saying is there's a need for it. And I think for that amount of money, I think it really tightens up what we're doing structurally. We're in an era where if you say or do anything, someone's jumping on you or the media or this or that, so.
Commissioner Law.
You said something that kind of struck me as a thought, and that's advanced liability. So it's something we always should keep in mind. And another thing, as we give this some thought, we've been really fortunate. In fact, we elected you because we knew you were going to be in the operation. You were going to be another officer, and you were going to bring Steve on board too. So we've been fortunate that way. But what we don't know is will the next sheriff elected be as involved in the day-to-day operation? We don't know that. So that's something to just keep in the back of our minds too as we move forward.
You know, when I talked, there were a lot of people want to be under sheriff. I got the best one. So that's the first thing, I got the best one. And we talked on day one. I said, if you're under sheriff, you'll wear a uniform every single day like I will. You'll wear body armor every day and all the equipment we carry. There won't be any of this, you know, you're gonna wear casual or golf clothes in or whatever. You have to be ready to go 110% to back the guys for two reasons. One, we're a small county with numbers as far as our personnel, and two, we don't have help from three sides. We get help from south. And if you're in Northport, you're in Leland, you're Suns Bay, anywhere north end of county, help is a long way from Traverse City PD or Grand Traverse Sheriff. So that said, he agreed to it. He wears a uniform every day like I do. I don't know if we dress like off duty, but this is how we dress every day. And I think you know the number of hours I put in a week. It is not an 8-hour day. So why I'm saying that is you're exactly right. We put the model forward that we would be there to help out on calls, backup, emergencies, and we do. And I do think that's had a positive effect on a deputy's morale. They know they have backup. They know that, you know, we're there. We believe in them. We also understand from a ground and boots level what their needs are day to day because we haven't separated from them. So that's how I argue that.
You know, I was gonna say, I have seen both of you and the lieutenant out responding, you know, that they are working administrators. They are not just administrators, they're working administrators. And I also am struggling with too many chiefs, not enough Indians. And so I don't know if, you know, we are a small operation, you know, as far as county, you know, you look at Grand Traverse, how many people they got, and, you know, they got a lot more officers. And consequently, they do have, you know, more sergeants and lieutenants and all of that.
Captains and majors,
you know,
exactly.
It's just the nature of the beast, how big we are. We're fortunate that our people are doing a good job and our crime rates are low, you know, and that doesn't happen by accident, you know, yeah, we're an older county, we don't have as much crime just because of that, but we do have good officers doing a good job. And that part of that is because we have working administrators. And I think there's a big value to that, both to the taxpayers, but also to the employees that, you know, work under you. You know, they know you got their back if something's going on. And, you know, like I said, I've seen you guys out responding on traffic accidents. You know, obviously you probably don't know what's happening until you get there, but I've seen you both at traffic accidents. And you know, I'm struggling with, I'm just being honest, adding an additional layer in there. I'm not, you know, because of the way you operate, I think it's working very well. I really do.
Okay, it works well. You being a military man, you understand that chain of command and certainly understand the different rankings. I would just say the difference in that being when prior sheriffs, going back to Charlie Johnson, Mike Oltersdorf ran, each year they had more and more stuff stacked on their shoulders. I mean, you never heard of the M22 challenge and the grapevine walks and the fall harvest. I mean, we're getting all these bicycle events and running events and boat events. Now we've got people paddling across Lake Michigan on pedal boards. Lieutenant Kiesel's in charge of that aspect of it. And he's meeting with these people all the time about liquor licenses and wineries and marijuana grow ops. And it's kind of burdened. What I'm saying is the administrative responsibility is just skyrocketing police work. If you go to Chicago or Detroit, there's not a lot of traffic enforcement because they're spending all their time on shootings and rapes and things like that. We are still within good balance here, but I can tell you our administrative burden is absolutely skyrocketing, and it just continues. And the number of people call, the problems, there's complaints on officers, there's complaints that we're not working traffic on this road, and they get stuck with that. So I think times have changed a little bit. And again, if this were not 1 penny of increase of budget, would it be a good idea? I would argue 110% yes. 110%, absolutely, we need this layer of supervision. And that's the last layer of supervision we need structurally that I see, unless we someday are a department with 100 employees, which I don't think we ever will be. I don't see the need for that, but that gives us ground supervision with boots on today. Right now, we start this, and each day we have them out there, so.
I would say to your comment about it works well, you're right, it does work well when we're available, when we're here. And we're not tied up in need. We have a big hole. We have a big hole on the weekend. During the day, we have a big hole when one of us is off and the others are busy, not hearing what's going on, because frontline supervision takes care of your, those important decisions need to be made right then, right now, to reduce liability, whether it's a Fourth Amendment issue, juvenile issue, search and seizure, whatever the case, where you're making that call at that time, right then. We can't be there to do that. We're not there to do that. Right now, on the weekends, it's a phone call. Hopefully that somebody's making before they make that type of decision, which to me is unfair to a road patrol deputy that has to have all that, that responsibility. You're not getting paid for that. That's a sergeant's job. That should be a sergeant making sure that stuff is done right, and they have that knowledge and that training behind them to do that. And right now we have a hole in frontline supervision.
Commissioner Rush.
Sheriff, can you tell us what your turnover rate looks like over the next year or two or 3 or 4?
Possibly 3 in the next 4 years. I would say for sure in the next year and a half, 1 to 2. When you look at this organizational chart, you get it. You will not see our latest hire, and it would be Deputy Hall, Mac Hall or Mackenzie Hall is our latest. You will not see that listed on here because Deputy Funes is retiring. His process and paperwork start in 2 weeks, where he's tailing out, ending his career. So they're switching. So we didn't even put him in, but one name will replace the other. So as you look at this, our average age of our agencies was 47.8 years old. Average age as of the time we hired Mac a few weeks ago. He's 23 years old. He's brand new, fresh out of the NMC Academy. Great kid, great personality. He's got a great future. He'll be with us a long time. But if you look at the older ones, there's anomalies. I'm 65, and a situation where, most people be retired at 65 in this line of work. I don't plan to retire for quite a while. But you have other people could bail out at 50. I can't control that once they get their time in. So what I'll say is 1 to 2 in the next year and a half. In over 4, we'll have that, but our model's going to stay about the same numbers wise.
The reason I asked the question is because I wanted to make the point. We're looking at this today as, in looking at the model that you have in place, where he requires the administrative part of their operation to also perform the same as our deputies. So typically in an organization, the administration does just that. They take care of the administrative aspect of an organization. In this case, it's a little bit different. We appreciate that. And I think it was mentioned that if we get a new sheriff in this position, a new undersheriff in this position, we may not have that flexibility because for whatever reason, that's the model that the new person may bring in. The other issue I'm concerned with is the new hires. And with new hires coming in and that turnover, they may not have the experience or the exposure that a senior officer may have and may not be in a position to make a command decision at the exact moment that it's required for the best interest of everything, liability, safety, so on and so forth. I can understand that I really don't like to have to put extra dollars out for this. However, I can support it because of a lot of different reasons. I do believe that when a person is not put in a position of being responsible to that level, their attitude is different. I know when I had employees over the years, they had a certain loyalty, they had a certain responsibility to do their job. But like the sheriff says, they don't get paid to make the command decisions. So are they going to make the best decision for us to keep ourselves out of a liable situation? We hope they do. If they don't, how can we fault them? Because we did not give them that responsibility. We did not give them the extra training that it takes to be a command at the command level or at a level where they're responsible. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I do support that. I don't like to have to pay for it, honestly, Sheriff. We have a tight budget, but I can understand the philosophy behind your desire to have those people in the right position, because now you have a go-to person
Right.
that you can say, you failed in your duties or you did a great job in your duties. Otherwise, it's kind of loosey-goosey.
And I'll tell you this much from my heart. I have in my mind 5 models of replacements when the undersheriff and I are no longer here. And you have some tremendous deputies and people in leadership positions and deputies who would make great sheriff and undersheriff. We're not going to have to put ads out and look around the country. You've got great people right here. And I know structurally what is being done. I have great confidence in their potential leadership. So I think down the road, you always, as a board, if you end up with a sheriff in a situation you're not comfortable with, you can always adjust their budget and just say, this isn't working, figure it out. But, I think that you're going to find that you've got great people sitting in the wings there, which is good. Hopefully I'll be an old retiree here someday, be able to look back at those decisions. But right now, I do think it's necessary, especially in light of all the social unrest.
Mr. Long.
Thank you. Quick question first would be cost. Is this basically about, at step one, $7,000 pay increase? If we were just so,
I got with Jim a while back on the numbers. The first year, I think it's a $27,000 increase for the 2 positions.
for both, you said 27?
27.
Okay, because I was looking at, oh, it's dollars. Okay, so the pay rate is dollars. Yeah, obviously, that's not. So a sergeant position starts in at 63 instead of 50, so it's about $13,000.
That's correct.
Each.
That's correct.
Gotcha, okay.
Yep.
That makes a lot more sense, okay. Yeah. In the grand scheme of the sheriff's department, it is a big budget. However, 2 years ago, this didn't make a lot of sense to me. And it just seems like we could take somebody who's on night or on days and shift them to nights, et cetera. But in this day and age, this to me makes a lot more sense. I think it's time that we start looking towards going to that, to do a lot of the things just said today. Some, maybe not so much, but in others, I think it's real important that we move forward.
I just want to say, one thing that you talked about, you're out here all alone, but I've read where Leelanau County has the highest ratio of law enforcement officers to population. I know that doesn't maybe apply so much in the summertime, but, I mean, I know we have tribal officers, we have national park law enforcement officers, we have DNR officers, we also have state police, all in Leelanau County. So I don't really think that you're out there all alone. And, you know, I mean, it may be a little bit less when you get to Northport, but yeah, and I know you do an agreement with them, you know, between those officers and ours. So, I mean, yes, you know, we are surrounded by water, but there is help there. I mean, and maybe that doesn't diminish from what you're talking about here.
Right.
But when we talk about officers, there are.
We have good partners. We absolutely do. And I would not, you know, criticize any of their support or anything, but we get the brunt of it. And certainly they are of great help to us. So yes, absolutely, I agree with you. I will say this too. You mentioned that, you know, we have a high percentage of officers per populace. That's why it seems like everybody in the world wants to move here. We have like a very, very, very low crime rate here. It's a very good place to live. I don't advocate people leave their doors unlocked or keys in ignition of vehicles, but really this is a good, safe place to live. We want to keep it that way. I do think our partners help us a lot with that, but we are the primary agency.
Sure. Just, if I may say something realistically, day to day, you point out those agencies, and they're good people, and we do get a lot of good cooperation. But we don't control their staff. We have no DNR assigned right now. The trooper that is here when he works one shift. If they pull him for training for 2 weeks, he's not here. You know, we don't control their staff, so a lot of times our guys are flying on their own. I mean, and a lot of times, and especially at night. And so and a lot of times our staffing is too at night. And so the ones we can count on are tribal. They're usually staffed, but they have their own issues as well. So.
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of inquiry, if I may.
Commissioner Ansel had his hand up.
I believe a point of inquiry supersedes the.
All right, go ahead.
My question to you, Sheriff, is when you're in a situation and it's your jurisdiction, who has control of the people who come on your scene? Who takes control of that scene?
So it'd be our command officer. So we have a process where if there's a car accident, the first one on scene is in charge of car accident, or a shooting, first one's on scene. As soon as supervision arrives, then that person is replaced. It's sort of the way emergency management operates. There's a pyramid system. So you're basically relieved of command of scene control, and you are now assigned to setting up accident reconstruction devices, our laser units, things like that, or you're assigned to actual traffic control where you're holding traffic back so the first responders don't get hit. So there is a level of replacement. Ultimately, it's my decision, because when it's decided we're going to call in the state police or the FBI or whatever's happening, if it's an etiological event, you have to call in Army, make that decision. It goes up our chain, will land in my lap. But day to day, scene to scene, that's exactly why we need those sergeants out there to make those layering decisions.
I don't really think that I didn't present my question correctly for you to answer.
Correct.
If you have an incident in your jurisdiction and you have somebody outside your jurisdiction who happens upon an incident, does the person, let's say you have a car accident, multiple injury accident on M22, and you got somebody from Sutton's Bay coming through Elmwood Township, comes on the scene as first person who arrives, he's on the fire department in Sutton's Bay. Does Sutton's Bay have control of that accident scene?
Well, no, the law enforcement would. So what'll happen is fire has their area, we have ours. And so like if a state trooper's on scene, it's a state police case. They do the report beginning to end. We assist them. If it's our case, state police or DNR show up, they assist us. So the fire departments have their own way to triage that. Does that answer that?
I'm just wondering if a situation occurs under your jurisdiction, does that responsibility end up coming to your desk every time?
Ultimately, unless the state police are the first responding agency, then it would go their route.
Okay.
Now,
so-
DNR would be there generally to assist. They're not normally doing traffic enforcement. Tribal assist us on anything we ask them to do, as they did last night. National Park Service, we have an agreement. I've deputized the tribal officers, so they are under our jurisdiction, but the plan is not to have them out working traffic on M72, just if it's in and around the reservation, they come on something, so we work together. But ultimately, it's gonna come to the first on-scene responding agency. In that case, it would either be sheriff most of the time, sometimes state police. Sometimes if it's on P-Town or reservation, it could be the tribal police run it through completely in theirs. But they generally tend to focus on more of the federal things that are going on and things involving, tribal matters.
I think the point that I was trying to make is if something happens in this county, whether we're first on the scene responding or not, that the responsibility of that incident 9 times out of 10 comes right back to
That is
your
correct.
desk.
That is correct. Just pure numbers wise, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, point of order. I don't believe a point of inquiry is appropriate for discussion. That's before a vote on a motion. So I think we need to be careful that we don't interrupt our.
And well, it didn't end up a point of inquiry too, so.
It's just a
Commissioner Answer.
from Robert's Rules of Order.
That's what I was just looking at.
Okay. Point of inquiry is a technical process requesting clarification on a procedural matter.
Before a vote.
It
Could
doesn't
be.
matter.
It doesn't say about
It
that.
doesn't say when it is, but, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Commissioner
we
Answer.
don't usually use that to interrupt the process.
Right. Commissioner Answer.
She's trying to say something. Okay. If we increase, we're not asking for headcount increase, we're actually promoting somebody to a sergeant.
Correct.
Does this money include the training that they will have to take? I'm assuming you have training for those people to become sergeants and become familiar with the duties that they are gonna be assuming, the additional duties. First of all, is there training?
There is training available and
Formalized
as,
training to actually make them go to that next step.
correct, and we do that throughout their careers and process. It's not like you have to train right away to do it.
No, but-
There's a time when there might be advanced supervisory school, and that's why we look at that overall budget in a holistic sense. Like, if we have the money, next year, so-and-so is gonna go to what they call staff and command school. Sometimes it's known as command and staff school. So they will go to staff command, that's their primary change in their training direction. And that's where the undersheriff is very, very good with the budgets. I talk to him, say, can we afford to send so-and-so? He looks through the budget, and we have to do this, this, and this, check all these boxes. Yes, we can probably do it next fall. And
So,
Pretty much
this
so.
money does not include the training the additional training that those people are, but you think that the existing training budget
Would
as
cover
we bumped it, would
yes.
cover that?
yes, it
training?
absolutely would, absolutely would.
Okay.
We've done that through corrections and roads since I've been sheriff. I believe they were doing it before that, but he's very good bean counter and it works out. Yep, we get it within the budget.
Any other questions or statements?
Maybe Jen, this is a tough question. This person has to switch union, right? Would that have an impact on their MERS? And how would that impact their MERS?
I'd have to recalculate, depending on when the person was hired, if they're going to be able to fall into going from one closed group to another. So that's on the spreadsheet that I gave, the undersheriff, it does state the 2 different retirement plan amounts at the current time. So I would have to factor in the wages. Most likely, if they are 2 closed and going closed to closed, what we would see is the top sergeant retirement may stay the same at 26%, but the POAM retirement would go up because there's less people paying into that wage.
I thought there'd be some impact there.
The only impact that wouldn't be is if you have someone hired at your all members rate.
Commissioner Law.
Well, that was my question, and the other half of my question, well, 2 things. One is, we would not be adding any more staff.
No.
We're talking dollars.
Correct.
So can we get what the cost of those dollars would be? That was my question. I think we should just bring that back for consideration. I know not all commissioners have weighed in on this. I kind of know where a couple of my commissioners are, but they're interested in getting those dollars. I am interested in those dollars.
Commissioner Redmond.
To me, that we are a low crime county, that we have enough chiefs and Indians both. And currently the the period that I read about in our budget information is talking about the weekends primarily. And, I don't know how you have this organized now, but like a physician, you designate somebody to be on call and, you share those responsibilities. Maybe you're on 3 days and off 4 or, however. But I don't think that we need any more chiefs either. And I think that because of the low crime that we do have, how many calls like this are you getting? How many times do people have to are unable to make a decision that they're calling in for their supervisor's opinion?
I don't have the exact, I don't know if I'm supposed to face that way, this way, I'll face the board. Commissioner, I don't have that exact figure in front of me, but it's a day-to-day, minute-to-minute thing. For instance, last night I'm at the Pit Spitters game and they called about a boat possibly in distress in Northport. So somebody had to make decisions whether we're going to call the marine safety deputies out who had already worked all day long and pay them overtime, which costs the county money, or could eventually end up in a search situation. I opted not to. Tribal just happened to be there. Tribal Conservation 5 went out, was in that area, went out, said the people are just sleeping on their boat. So it turned out to be a non-emergency, but as those field decisions are made, it's difficult to always be able to get a hold of what supervisor. And if we technically put them on call by union contract, we have to pay them X amount of dollars per day of extra pay because they're in what's called on-call status. As of now, we just sort of take that on. But day-to-day, minute-to-minute, there are decisions about overtime. A lot of times accidents or complaints happen at the end of one shift, the beginning of another. Well, by the time one person explains everything that's going on and they redo their evidence checking, sometimes you're basically paying one guy to handle it from 5 to 6 in the evening, another guy to handle it from, say 6 o'clock in the evening till 7 at night. So they have to make decisions about who does what and when. And it's oftentimes, all levels of supervision aren't available all the time. That's why we think it's important. I know that's not a direct answer how many, but I can't honestly say that, how many it would be.
So you and the undersheriff are handling this now.
It kind of cut out digitally. Try that again.
You and the undersheriff are handling now.
Yes, primarily the lieutenant does on the road, and when there's decision beyond that, it comes to the undersheriff or me. And as I was saying earlier, the lieutenant sometimes gets 4 or 5 decision-making phone calls on his day off or after he's already worked. So right now we sort of triage it up, who's available to make the decision. Sometimes during a car chase, you're not gonna be able to make a phone call during a car chase, or if you have to enter a building on a warrant or there's a gun situation. Sometimes it's very difficult to go up the chain of command. You need field command on staff at the time to make the decision. We have a lot of people like suicidal with guns in their hands, or people took a whole bunch of pills, and we have a lot of situations that involve very, very quick decisions by supervision, and it doesn't really always work to try to get a hold of one of us. We try, but we're doing our best.
So was that a question of partnership with the tribe, or was that a question of your staff? Those questions.
She was asking the sheriff.
Oh, it was the sheriff? Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
like, are we handling that now, and how are we triaging those decisions?
I thought there was a partnership with the tribe question in there, and I was trying to make sure I understood.
I think I understand, but if you promote one of the people that's out in the field to promote them, Does that take them out of the field and put them over here? Or are we going to have less road patrol and less coverage?
That is the ace question of the day. So we looked and discussed that. That's not gonna change the fact we still have 3 on at night. It just, there's a sergeant, there. I'm sorry, 3 on during the day. It's just there's a sergeant there to make it. So absolutely no less coverage. That field sergeant position we have, make as many arrest and drunk driving cases as anybody else. So the great question. We do not lose any coverage in the field. We just get a layer of chain of command to make decisions, keep us out of liability. That's very important.
I'd just like to say, since I've been here and Lieutenant Kiesel was promoted, there's the chain of command. He's first in line for these guys. He's taken all these calls that the sheriff's talking, and I don't hear much unless he's gone, like he was last week. Then my phone's ring, and it's not easy to explain because you guys are not in it every day, but deal with people who are the most unpredictable animal on earth. Questions come up all the time that a person with the supervisory training and the knowledge to do that can make those types of decisions. People that don't have them don't feel comfortable making those kinds of decisions, so they call. And I get a lot of calls. And I do every time he's gone, so I know he's getting those calls when I'm not. And he's doing that, I'm doing that, which is fine on my time off. But it's happening every day. And you know, frequently, not every day, but frequently, we're doing this. And you know, it'll be 4, 5, 6, 7 calls, boom, 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 because the decisions are having to be made as things change. And that's what a sergeant does for me.
And in that light, last night, the second home run of the game was hit right when dispatch called me. I had to cup the phone and wander out through people, and I went in a maintenance closet to make a phone call just to communicate. I don't know if it was a drowning or what. And this past weekend, I was farming. I was on or around a tractor the whole time. Same with undersheriff, he has a tractor. My phone's with me 24/7. We'll always answer call, but you can't always get somebody, and that's why you need that field sergeant out there right now to make the decision. We had a fatal motorcycle accident a couple days ago, and there was a lot of logistics because they're out of state. You had 2 people involved in the accident. One obviously lost their life at the scene. Unfortunately, Purple Heart, U.S. military veteran. One of the questions was, what do we do with the gun? He has a CPL, he has a firearm. And, you know, how do you process it? Do you give it right back to the family then? Do you put it in evidence? What do you do? And we have a process too. Everything involves a decision now. There was so much more common sense 25 years ago in law enforcement. Just you could understand things better. There was less admin. Everything's a decision and responsibility now. Do you have the authority to take a gun from someone on a fatal accident, or do you not? So.
Well, we're gonna have to leave this because this
Sure.
polycom has to go up to the courthouse, so we'll have to make that decision there. Yes,
You have about 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes left, yeah.
But I'm just saying that just so that everybody
Sure.
knows that we're gonna have to conclude this.
Sure.
So was there any other statements or questions?
There's one question. It says Fund 468 Capitol Tower EMS. I don't believe that's mine, is
No,
it?
that's not.
Okay,
That's
so-
fine. I thought this
and-
was the last item, and Commissioner Answer.
I had 2 other items. One, the road patrol grant is being decreased. Do you want to talk about where we're going to come up with the money in the budget?
Yeah, that's the 416 grant. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. The 416 grant, which is a secondary road patrol car. That's the car which Steve Bailey is assigned to right now that works secondary roads where all the bad accident locations are, speeds, this and that. That fund fluctuates year to year. Last year, we had 33,000 in the fund as a state match grant. And mid-year, they said, hey, we have more money than we thought. They gave us an additional 7, which brought us up to just over 40,000. This year, they're starting out cutting it back 7 down to 23. And for that fund in that position to go forward, the county has more cost involved in keeping that fund in that car. So that's just the straight up story on that. That is primarily due to COVID. A lot of people weren't driving for a 3, 4, or 5 month period this year. Less car accidents, less fatals, less tickets being written. And that's a state police fund. It's probably best answered by bringing a trooper in here about why that fund is down percentage wise, and we could get an accident trooper in there, but we're locked into that fund just as it is.
I understand, we're gonna get less money.
Mhm.
We have to, if we're going to keep the staffing the same as we have, we have to come up with that additional money.
Right,
So you don't have that any place in your budget to
Correct.
maintain that level of
Correct.
funding. So we are being asked to cover that additional amount. And so we have to, when we're having our budget discussion, we have to realize that and make sure we address that.
absolutely right.
The second item that isn't in the budget is we have, legal costs this year. It's gonna be about, who knows, but, about $10,000, we're just guessing, for arbitration costs.
Regarding the union contracts you're talking about?
Well, that and the 2 complaints.
The grievances.
Great, okay, sure. So personnel and union issues. I just want to make sure we can talk a lawsuit or something. Okay,
No,
okay,
no,
yep,
We're
okay.
talking about
Sure.
the additional costs.
Okay.
That's got to be incorporated in your budget too.
That's new to me. I don't
I
know
don't think
what are,
so. I
Well,
don't-
it's an expense to the county. Where were you going to get the money from?
We have a legal fund.
Yeah, I don't think we can use that against the sheriff's department. I don't think.
They do have a budget line item for legal. They have attorney fees, 5,000.
Other than that budget line item, that's a budget line item though.
That's a budget line item.
How much is in there?
It's 5,000.
so do we have that in our budget?
Do we have to
Yeah,
take
I
that?
don't think we've had much discussion. It helps.
All I'm saying is we know we're going to have an expense. It's an expense to the county. It's,
Actually, that's coming from this year's budget, though.
right.
So we,
Well, my point is, we have to, for next year's budget, if it hit us this year, may not have a negotiation, but if we're gonna have arbitration hearings on a regular basis, there is a cost to the county, and, it's just the way it is.
sure, I understand.
It's just the way it is.
Well, Jen and the undersheriff both said we have $5,000 in that account, then apparently that's what that's for. We really haven't had to deal with that in the past. We've been staying pretty high cotton, so I'm hoping we stay there, but it is what it is. We'll deal with it if we have to.
This is the first time since the sheriff and I have been here that there's that arbitration.
Yeah, well, there you go. Hopefully we won't have any in the future. I mean, it's a union, it's a contract, sort of that's a different entity. We'll certainly do whatever we're obligated to do.
It is an expense.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
I want,
Yep.
we have to incorporate that, in our money discussion.
Somewhere in our budget, it's gonna be there.
Sure. I understand, and thank you for the time this morning. I know we've got 4 minutes before this next conference starts. I want to thank all of you on the board for your long-term support of us. Some of you weren't here when I started as sheriff, was elected in 2012, but you just have been solid for us. I am the envy of many other sheriffs, believe me, because of the area we work in, the people who live here, and how you support us. I really appreciate that. Chet gave me this yesterday. It's the application to go forward with the CARES Act grant so that the deputies and those who've been working through this stressful time get this. I just want to take a minute and thank you. I appreciate that. And I want you, as well as the public, to know how much we appreciate your support, because you really, I know it's not always a 7-0, it's a 4-3, it's a 5-2, but you've got our back, and we feel like we can go about our jobs and do our job with the public with less stress based on your support. I just really thank you. I really do.
Just a quick clarification on that, because you asked the other day, the bailiffs, the Marine Patrol officers are eligible, the support staff people are not eligible. That's from the state of Michigan.
And that would be the 2 clericals we have,
So we reduced that number down.
but dispatch is
Yeah,
included.
dispatch
Is
is, the question was
included,
about those
So it takes the number down from 60 to 58 then.
and support staff.
Okay.
So we did the application, we did not add the support staff.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all your
Take a
support.
break now, and then we'll come back once the power time is set back up.
Do we have to leave this room?
No.
You can listen if you want.
I'm not here, make a phone call.
Don't they need this machine or how?
Yeah, but you can still sit here and listen.
You can still sit here and listen
You
to
don't
my
have
minutes if you want. You don't have to leave.
They're they're gonna come in here though.
No.
No, this is all via Polycom. You can sit, you can just watch if you
wish.
want.
They're gonna go on from up there.
Patricia and Pete, you have to log off.
Yes, they're gonna go bye-bye. See
So
ya.
how do they need this machine and not use this machine?
What?
They are
way. Take advantage of free online courses through the
I get the wrong, I gotta stop reading the blotter in the Enterprise, because that's, they do more than just get cows out in the middle of the road, I suppose.
Animal calls are the #1 call in Leelanau County, by far, by far.
Are you gonna call?
I saw yesterday in the Enterprise, somebody had dropped off their car, vans, but left the motor running all night. Hopefully.
Linda and Deb.
Jen, have you got big plans for the weekend?
Other than work,
Are you gonna get your boat out on the water?
they're going out today.
Are you?
Good for you.
No, I'm not. The family is.
Are you
Rest of
ready?
the
Are
family.
you set up?
I'm set up when you are.
Okay, how about you?
I'm on, yeah.
We're still waiting
Are we
for
live then?
Peachy.
Okay, we are live.
Peachy's not on.
She's coming in though.
I sent her a text. She
Yeah.
knows we're live.
Okay.
We are live. So once Deb gets here, we'll. Kristen, is Gary gonna talk first? I see he's got,
Sure.
I see he's got his weapon up here.
I'm doing what I'm told.
Okay.
Okay.
I think you're up first, really.
Okay. It makes sense to have Gary in the room though.
Just Deb, tell me what?
Yeah, we're still, I thought you were getting
I
it.
did, I thought you were coming in. I appreciate it. Okay, you're up.
Sit up there?
Yes, ma'am. And they have copies of your
Okay, great.
July proposals.
I have to talk to one of Tony's constituents.
Like to call us back to order. Okay, so next on the agenda would be the phase 2 and 3 of the HVAC project. Do you have anything or just want questions?
I would like to just summarize, really, has everyone got a chance to read the summaries and then the two?
It's the exact
Okay.
same thing that was passed out in July. There's no
Yeah,
changes.
there has been no changes. So if you have questions, would entertain those now.
Commissioner Ansel.
Well, we made the decision to, thank you.
Thank you.
We made the decision to go ahead and start replacing the heat pumps in this building rather than, going forward with the other system. And my understanding is we have found additional problems. And so I'm trying to understand where we stand as far as, is the decision to continue to replace the existing heat pumps as they fail or start failing, is that a bad decision? Or are we now looking at what do we need to do to continue with that scenario of replacing the heat
Well,
pumps as
I
they
guess
fail?
it's like driving a car. When a part breaks down, you have a choice to make. You could just fix the car and spend the money, but you don't know how much it's gonna cost you the next time it breaks down, thing. Or you can just go ahead, bite the bullet, and get a new car. So there's no right or wrong answer. It depends. If you're not gonna do phase 2 or 3, then we have to continue to replace the heat pumps. Because we have, no one thought that the phase 1 was gonna take care of all the issues. I mean, so we know that, so that's a
It's
tough
fine,
call.
it's fine.
We've replaced, is it 9 or 10 now, Gary?
10.
10. So
It's 9, but you've got an additional, what, 4 or 5 that are,
we know there's gonna be other ones coming.
And we all
Then
understand
on
that.
top of that, we found another issue that Gary's gonna talk about. It may make sense actually for Gary to go next, and that way you can
Yeah.
have a better picture of what's going on, and then talk about
sure.
phase 2.
To some extent, I do bring up that, the issue that he's going to address in the summary of current issues. And it's a problem. There's a flashing red light.
So
so-
maybe help out Gary
Gary, you wanna
explain, and then that will give you a better picture.
Yeah, that's fine. You bring your toys?
Indeed,
Okay,
I
good.
did, thank you. Hello.
So we were having issues, and we couldn't figure out why, because some of them, the heat pumps were fine, but in a nutshell, Gary showed me a filter one time that was completely plugged. I think it was sand or particles.
Yes, actually particulates that
And
we
we
have.
thought, well, okay, it's maybe a fluke one, but then we saw some other ones with the same problem, and Gary is obviously an expert, saying, we got a bigger problem somewhere, these should not be plugging up. These are filters, and there's obviously particles coming into the line, so
Yes.
go ahead and explain.
This has been an ongoing problem for a little bit, but it seems to be getting worse. And the only reason I'm bringing this to light right now is the fact that the system for the heat pumps, the loop system, has to be maintained at a certain pressure. Well, we have antifreeze in that, which is a good grade, earth friendly and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm trying to say to you is every time I lose pressure in that, heat pumps start to lock out. So you have to replenish it with water, which is fine. But the part that I'm concerned about is water and 32 degrees are not the best of friends, meaning that that loop system goes out to that cooling tower out in the parking lot. Well, if you start diluting that antifreeze with water, again, that we're going to have a cold winter. The only reason I'm bringing all of this up is we've gone through, and Jerry and I have purposely isolated the building. We did a complete test on this, and we were successful with that. And we found that we do have a leak in the pipes that go underground. Now, those are 2 6-inch piece of PVC pipes. They're that big around. They go directly underneath the boiler room, through the floor, out to that cooling tower. We were able to isolate that system.
How long is that from beginning to its destination? What's the length?
That underground pipe.
Yeah, the underground pipe was, I believe, from the point when we repaired it out there, it's right around 80 to 100 feet,
Okay.
times 2 pipes.
80 to 100 feet and 2 pipes?
Yes.
In different locations?
No, they go parallel from
Okay.
the old boiler room, straight
Okay,
down,
yeah.
across the corridor, and then out. Anyway, what we're looking, oh, go ahead.
So that is 1+, it's the corridor and not the storage rooms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Jerry and I were able to actually prove that we do have, because we've looked at this building for quite some time to look for any type of spurious, spontaneous leaking, walls, ceilings, on and on and on. Well, it wasn't until we were able to actually isolate the building from that system that we actually proved that we did lose pressure. I'm able to maintain a certain amount, but I have to keep an eye on it all the time.
How much do you think is leaking out over any certain amount of time?
I can't give you a gallon rating. I can give you pressure because we were able to actually prove that. The water makeup system doesn't have a flow meter to that, so that's why I can't give you a gallons. All I know is once a month I have to replenish it.
And how much are you replenishing it by once a month?
Well, at
You
70
can't tell
pounds.
because the water comes in automatically, or can you,
No, I don't do that. I have to manually check it every
are
month.
you adding antifreeze or are you adding?
No,
water?
that's why I'm here. I took it upon myself, of course, we did, to actually prove this situation. And because we know that winter's coming, it's inevitable, that's why I'm here right now, is to find out where we want to go with this, because the most inexpensive way to do this is, of course, add more antifreeze. Or, that's why I brought some of these samples here, change the piping, block off everything that's underground, and then actually run 2 new lines in through the building and then out to the cooling tower. That's why I'm trying to, we need to bring this to light so that everybody knows what's going on, so we can make an informed decision on this.
Commissioner Ansel.
We know we already have an issue with the cooling tower anyway. So if we have to do something with the cooling tower, we gotta fix those pipes anyway, irregardless.
That becomes
what we decide to do
priority
with the
now.
Cooling tower?
Yes, sir. That becomes priority now.
Okay.
Commissioner Russell.
Looking back on all the problems that we have had with our heat pumps, do you think that this could have been, over time, a major factor in causing these heat pumps to fail?
I would say that it probably has a fractional amount to add to this, but our problem that we run into is we can replace the accessible parts on these heat pumps. But when it comes to the reversing valves, some of the TXV valves, because of where they're packed into the ceiling, and I don't mean to be, that's what makes it expensive. So in answer to your question though, the heat pumps have safety guards, they've got pressure lockouts and things like that. We do see more and more of that now, especially when the outdoor temperatures get into the upper 80s and the 90s. That cooling tower is not cooling the water off or the liquid off to the point, but we've always had that issue. But like I said, or reiterating, those heat pumps have safety lockout devices in it.
So we couldn't put a sleeve inside those pipes that would sit, just as they're doing with the sewer lines now, and.
We actually looked into that and actually had several different companies, and this was prior to this, to see if there would. But we could not get anybody to guarantee that. Yeah, because we actually looked at having a camera run down through there to see if there was something blatantly obvious. Because that was the reason we did that a few years back, to find out why are we getting so much debris in a closed loop system. And it wasn't, like I said, until we were actually able to prove a breach in there.
Well, couldn't you put a camera down, find where the leak is? Or you don't think you could?
No, we asked several companies that do have those cameras, and they wouldn't be able to help us with it because of the sharp 90s is the excuse that we were given at that time.
Yeah.
And then the total length of it. Yeah, because we really looked at that idea as an alternative path.
Because I'm thinking you could, I know it'd be quite a project, but you could find where it's straight, and you tear up the cement, get down to it, and then you make a hole into, and then use that straight line to find it and then repair it that way.
If we could be certain that, and I mean this carefully, if we could be certain that that was the only place it was leaking or of a weak spot. Now, we're assuming, only because we can't physically see it, that it's probably at some sort of a bonded joint. Yeah, and then with the fact that this building is on clay and rock, we all know that living here, that the earth is moving all the time. It's cracking cement and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've looked at different alternative paths to this.
Commissioner Long.
That was the point I was just gonna make. If it's got one crack due to a rock being pushed out,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of time. So we knew, and these heat pumps were just a short-term solution to get us through. We knew we were going to have to deal with this in the future anyway.
Yes.
What is that, what would that cost for us to rerun all those lines? Do you have figures yet?
I do. I asked our engineer, commercial engineer, to get involved in this. I took it upon myself and brought him in here and showed him the various areas where we could go with this, how we could do this. We come up with, of course, industrial standards. This is a wonderful product, and I brought these as a show and tell, if you don't mind. But these products here, of course, as you can see, are all smooth on the inside. They're bonded together. They have to be certified in order to do this. And then, of course, this is an example piece, as is that. That could actually be run through the building, where you wouldn't see that, but that would be.
Up over and not underground.
That's correct.
So
No
we-
more underground.
Underground with that.
Yes.
Okay. Because, but that would just go to our, as Tony said, the evac, or evap.
The Evapco cooling
That
tower. Yeah.
That was the other system we'd be getting rid of anyway, correct?
Well, this is where Kirsten and I were and I were talking about that very issue. If this was to go into place, and it would be up to them to decide that, if they could still use it for their chiller that's going to take the place of the Evapco unit. That was the whole purpose.
We don't know yet.
Well, that would be up to their engineering firm to actually prove it, but at least we're still got the same lines going out to the same location. And fortunately, we don't have to dig up the cement out there in the parking lot because it was flanged off, and here we go. That's where another leak occurred a few years back. And if you remember back in '08, that floor, well, when the floor was dug up?
2012.
When the floor was dug up? Oh,
Yeah, since we moved in about 12.
we had another issue, and we still have that blemish in the floor today that is a constant reminder. So my concern here, and if you want, I can pass this around, but going back to answering your question, just for this product installation, turnkey, if you will, we should have had this paperwork. We're looking at basically $31,000.
31?
If we went to the metal pipe, the Victaulic, all of that, that's $38,000. And that's why
But do you think this is a superior product?
it is, it's been proven. It has to be certified, which it is, and then we have actual certified installers for this. But it's a remarkable product, and it's the fact that it's vibration proof. I mean, it will withstand an awful lot of movement, and it'll work well, and less sweating than you would get on metal pipes. And because it's got a smooth interior, you're not going to pick up any sort of scoring or debris off of that.
Commissioner Ansel.
Irregardless of whether we replace the cooling tower or not, we're still gonna need pipes running out there
Yes,
in any scenario we come up with, we're gonna need those pipes. Is that a correct statement?
that is correct. Even the DOAS system, the new chiller, has to have a sufficient amount of volume, pipes and that.
If we were to put these pipes in today to solve the problem today, and they elect to go to another system in the future, are those pipes sufficient to meet that?
Yes,
Requirement in the
volume-wise
Yeah.
and product-wise. In other words, no interaction with the antifreeze or coolant system
So-
that they would put in,
We're looking at having to do this
irregardless.
irregardless. And the question comes down to, do we want to use plastic or metal? It's really our only choice here.
Well, our if you'll excuse the expression, the scare is just like Mr. Janik pointed out, is these screens, even to this day, I am still cleaning out debris.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's why, when you look at that, we've taken samples, in fact, to several different places to have it analyzed. And the fear that we have, and I got to say this out anyway, is when you're pumping scale, debris, sand It acts like a sandpaper. When you think about copper pipe now, not the cast iron, you're scoring that, especially around every bend, 90 or whatever. Well, that's why I'm so diligent about keeping an eye on what's coming down, if there was anything coming down the walls or the ceiling or dripping, because we don't want to see pinholes. Okay, I know it's a long-winded answer to a short question, but
And, you know, my
you can
point
see where
is,
my concerns are.
we have to do something no matter
That's true.
the downstream choice that, you know, this board or a future board might make. You're gonna have to do this.
So we have to ask the engineers if they're gonna work, if it's gonna be compatible.
Right.
And work, right.
You know, once we get their approval, I mean, you know, because it will be up to them. But we already know that volume-wise, 2 6-inch lines, they're already there. We still need those 6-inch lines to go to the new chiller that will be put in place. And of course, that's already in their plans, that if we are going to do this, I mean, it's going to be totally flushed anyway to get rid of all the debris. I mean, that's a given. That's going to happen. But to reiterate, yeah, we still have to do it.
Do we have the option of, you know, like, okay, let's say we're gonna move forward with this solution, but are there such a thing as an inline sediment filter to capture this stuff so we're not continually circulating it?
Indeed, and it's already been discussed with the new system, and yes, it will be in place.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just a given, because when you think of the joints, the connecting pieces, the elbows, there's always little pockets of
We
something
know
that
it's
can.
already out there, settled in the system.
We've circulated it for 13 years now, so,
So, you know, if whatever we do, we
yes,
can put an inline sediment filter, just like in your house.
that is
At
correct.
least anything that does start to move, we can capture.
That is correct.
Okay.
Traditionally, usually you go within 2 years and never have to change a screen or clean a screen from a heat pump. And this October 2nd, I'll be going on 14 years here.
So you don't think the sediment's coming from the well?
No, not at all. No, no.
And your concern here that at least that I'm hearing is because you've been adding water, you're concerned about the winter it freezing.
The dilution of the antifreeze that's in the system now is getting to the point where, heaven forbid, if we ever had a pump fail in a sub-zero night, if you will, or days. If you remember a few years back, we had that situation where we were at the 0 and minus degree point, and Jerry and I, found various pipes that were in the walls.
Right.
Fortunately, we caught them before it was a disaster, and that's where I'm going with this, because that cooling tower that's out there has nothing more than just metal pipes that go through there. There's dampers that open, and there's a fan and all that. But in the winter, that's the whole purpose of the antifreeze, is to prevent that from freezing and cracking. Because if
So,
that,
I mean, do you have a means to put more antifreeze in it?
indeed,
And because we do definitely have to have that done before winter, so.
indeed. Yeah, I also took the liberty to there's certain bypass valves, without going into too much detail about this, to create a constant flow through there in the wintertime. But the strength level of the antifreeze is why I'm here now, because of the concern of it, so that we can kind of figure out where we want to go from here. Because let me say this, if we can't do any of this, which is fine, I'm going to have to put antifreeze in it. Yeah, otherwise the building will shut down.
Anything else, anyone? Oh, thanks, Gary. Now we'll talk, please. All
Well,
right. Thank you very much.
glad to answer any questions.
Yeah.
Did your firm come up with some rough estimates?
They did, that's what I was saying about this would be about
Would
30.
you have that?
Yes, but you should have already had it, but,
Okay, I know you were gonna get it to me, I just said, okay, I can pass it on to others.
okay, do you want
I
me
have
to?
not gotten anything, I just checked my email.
Oh, because I sent that to you and then I sent it to Jerry, but that's all right, we should have had it printed out, but do you want us to go get some right now?
No, I just wanna make sure that if you send it out, I can email out, I just wanna make sure that,
Sure.
because you said you're gonna get it, I just wanna make sure that you all have that.
Oh, I'll make sure that's done here today.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay.
We need to add this to next month's calendar, you know, executive session, so we can actually take some action. You know, this is a budget meeting, not
No.
an action meeting.
I choose, or I'm saying it's an informative meeting so that everybody knows what's going on, so it isn't a surprise. But thank you.
Every time Gary comes, we have an issue.
Just money each and every
I'm the
time
issue
he
man,
comes.
aren't I? But I bring good things. Yeah, I can bring you the issues, but I bring the resolution to the problems. How about that?
It's one way to look at it.
Yes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Westphal.
Yeah, I just had a question about the fact that this is a budget meeting and that I comment about putting it on the agenda for next week. On, this year's budget then. So we're not really,
Do you want to put it on the agenda for our next regular meeting? Is that what you're saying?
right. I mean, if we need,
She froze. Yeah, you're frozen.
I think Patricia might be frozen too, because there, now it's good.
Commissioner Redbach, was that, the question was, do you want to put it on the agenda?
yes.
Okay. We'll do that then. Thank you.
Here.
I will, sure.
Oh,
So before we go further with any questions, the summary that I provided you does cover this issue. And we also, when we were going through the heating phase, we did come across sediment in drain traps and have got photographs of it. So we've been aware of it. It was us that tried to look at pricing out what it would cost to run a camera down through the piping, because we thought it would be an easy enough fix to just run a sleeve through the pipes and fix it that way. It's not that way. So it's expensive, and there's, like he says, there's too many change in direction, 90s, whatever, in the piping underground. So the idea, the more environmentally sound thing, is to go overhead, across the corridor, from the existing boiler room, the old boiler room, not the new one, across the hallway, up overhead, through the multipurpose room of the gymnasium, and then out, and then join the repaired pipeline on the outside of the building down by the cooling tower. And John Richards' original design accounts for that already. So you don't have to spend money on redesigning. There may be some modification that needs to be done to the existing original drawings, because as you remember, we went from a whole three-phase project down to a one at a time type of situation. So he may just need to make some modifications and pull some spec on equipment for you, but I wouldn't argue with what Gary has said to you. I think that that's realistic, and numbers maybe a little bit high, but we can help coach, we can, provide confirmation of the numbers based upon what you have. But the good news is that you don't have to, go out for bid for an engineer, have an engineer redo this. The stuff's been done already. So, the second phase would address the leak, and it would also address the outside air adjustments from the recovery unit downstairs, which has not worked for 7 or 8 years. It's got a series of motors in it. Not all of the motors are working. They don't work. So based upon code, we have set the building so that it has the required amount of outside air, which is more important now than ever, right? You need fresh air in a building. So you do have to address that cooling tower, because I don't care what anybody says, at that age and the problems that you've consistently had with it, now you're running water through it, there's gonna be water that's gonna stick in it somewhere, and something's gonna break next spring. So that's kind of another situation where, from a prioritization standpoint, that guy's gotta be fixed, and that air handling unit downstairs has gotta be fixed, so that you can properly ventilate in the building without too much humidity, without too much noise from the fans, so on and so forth. That phase 2 addresses all of that stuff. Does anybody have any questions about what I've shared with Chet from July?
Commissioner,
No, underground pipes, you said that, we can go overhead, go outside, and go back down and hit the pipes that are already buried in the ground.
Yep.
But that might be where the leak is. We don't know
No,
where the leak is.
no, it's not there, because that has recently been repaired. It was repaired in 2012.
Okay, so we're fairly confident that the pipes from that junction point to the cooling
It's about
tower-
12, 14 feet. Yeah,
Okay, so,
we have a high confidence level,
okay.
and that the leak exists somewhere between where it's been
Under
repaired in
the
2012
building.
and the old
The isolated
boilers.
building.
Okay.
Is
Yeah,
that-
yeah.
Okay, now,
So, and by the way, if you take up this recommendation at the next meeting, it would not, in other words, you wouldn't have to re-spend money to proceed with phase 2. It would align with phase 2.
okay, so we're to the point where we know we need to do something with the pipes. We know we have a problem with the cooling tower, and we're gonna have to do something with that cooling tower at some point in time.
And the makeup air unit, the energy recovery unit downstairs.
That's where I'm a little hazy here, because depending on if we continue to use the heat pumps or move to the chilled beam system, irregardless, we have to do something with that unit downstairs as well as the cooling tower.
Both of those two large pieces of equipment, Commissioner, are at the end of their lifespan.
And I believe that, But what I'm getting at is, when do we have to make the decision of, we're gonna go to the chill beam system, or we're gonna continue to use the heat pumps that we made that decision last time, that we were just gonna start replacing heat pumps?
So you're kind of talking about apples and oranges, which is
Okay.
why I broke it into 2 phases for you. Phase 2 talks about common area cooling and ventilation. Phase 3, which would fall back on heat pumps and or chilled beam, is broken out into a separate phase to handle cooling in office spaces.
Okay, so the phase 2 things here, all these air, VAV units and stuff.
Yeah.
We need those irregardless of which direction we go.
Yes.
Whether we continue replacing heat pumps.
The VAV
or-
boxes will move the air around a building in a variable way rather than an all-on or an all-off way. It's energy efficient, okay? And that will allow the common spaces like this meeting room, the hallways, the corridors, the restrooms, all of the public spaces to have proper ventilation. Right now, you are limping with that air handling unit.
I just want to make sure that I understand that we have to do that. All of these items in phase 2 have to be done no matter what decision we make on the heat pumps versus chill beam option.
Yes, but we don't recommend that you continue with the heat pumps because they're simply a lesser quality way or a less efficient, from an engineering perspective, way of managing cooling in office spaces. But that's our opinion.
That's another discussion. I want
Right.
to make sure that, we are being faced with what do we have to do right now, and versus what do we have to do if we go this direction or this direction?
Well, you can't do phase 2, you can't do phase 3 until you, well, let me say this another way. You couldn't do phase 3 without doing phase 2.
Is there any,
But you can do them separately, for example, if you wanted to put them in one budget year versus another budget
That's what I'm
year,
getting at.
which is why they've been presented in 2 separate chunks.
so there's no change from an engineering standpoint of doing phase 2 based on which direction we go with phase 3?
There would be some, if you were to continue with water source heat pumps for cooling in office spaces, there would be some modification that would be required to the design. We would have to make some considerations in phase 2 for removal of ductwork and piping, which may or may not be needed in the future. But the variable air volume boxes are what you want in the bigger spaces here and in the courtrooms and so on. They're just a better way to manage fresh air.
I'm just, I guess I'm wondering then, if we have the heat pumps doing the smaller, the offices and things, and this unit would do the common spaces, would those still work off the water system? I mean, or, because it sounds like to me that you're gonna mix them up and.
Getting a little bit into the weeds. He's
Yeah.
more of an engineer than me. I don't know if I can, I'm not qualified to answer that question.
That's okay.
But Gary probably can answer
Yeah,
better.
thank you. They're gonna have a heat exchanger, so in answer to your question, any of the heat pumps that would be in existence with the new system would still have to work off of the flow of their chiller.
Of the
that's
chiller,
going in.
yeah.
Yeah,
So it would actually run both systems
yes,
at the time, because I was wondering if this chiller would just, you'd run that water through the heat pumps and it would just push air, but you're saying it would actually still, the heat pumps would still work themselves.
they can still work with their system, yes.
What you're describing, Chairman, what you're
Yeah.
describing is a more costly
Yes, I realize
route.
that. Right.
And if y'all remember when you guys had roads come in and provide you this matrix,
Right.
all you need to do is go back and look at that.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that we would be able to still work it without doing phase three.
Okay.
You could, yeah, you could, let me put it this way, you could probably get along
Until we do phase three.
for perhaps, if you didn't do it consistently in a budget cycle, you could probably skip a budget cycle.
Okay. So you will, once we go to phase two, the sooner we do phase three, the better off we are.
Yes,
Yeah, as a complete turnkey
I
system.
guess that would, yeah. that-
you'll
that's
stop
what
the, you'll stop the maintenance.
We kind of
problems
have
that
to
you
do
have,
phase
yeah.
three once we do phase two.
That's because I'll have more than enough maintenance stuff to do here.
So,
Thank you,
so
Gary.
then, if we're looking at, then we have to look at how do we get $2 million out of our general fund to pay for phase two? That's gonna be the question. We're all saying yes, or do we just do the water lines for now? And that's what we'll have to talk with, our accountants.
Yeah, you guys gotta, you have to get to that point, but I would prioritize because of the sustainability. Well, it's, to be honest, Gary will tell you as well.
Right.
There are 7 motors in that makeup air unit, and what, 3 of them are working?
No, 2 of them are actually dead.
2 are dead.
Yeah, they're a special proprietary motor.
The other issue that you have to understand too, guys, is that if you don't address the makeup air unit, you're gonna have issues with staff complaining. Because in order to maintain the outside air turnover by code in a pandemic, especially, you can't fight the temperature outside. You're gonna fight the temperature outside all the time.
And if you remember, I can't remember what was in the MAC update, there are several lawsuits now of employees complaining about buildings where the quality of air does not meet the standards, which is a violation, and it's now with COVID-19, becomes a health threat. And so we want to make sure we don't get in that
You
situation.
can't open windows in this building.
And back to your question about financing, if you remember, Mr. Galligan gave some options, but Steve Peacock, our auditor, said we actually have the ability to self-bond ourselves if you want to, from a cash flow perspective, without impacting our ratings or anything. In very good shape financially. Actually, Steve Peacock was the one that suggested, because he was here at the meeting a couple of years ago when we were talking about these projects. He said financially we could self-bond ourselves. I would say you should do that, but there are options out there.
Let me also say this, based upon the way that the information has been presented to you, it's been presented in 2 different chunks, right? You can consolidate some of the mobilization costs by mobilizing only 1 more time instead of 2 more times. And the time that it takes to go out to bid, to build a solicitation, to, all the stuff that we went through last summer with phase one, so on and so forth. I'm very appreciative and sympathetic of your concerns about the cost. But it's, you know, it's like your check engine light.
So I guess to understand, so you're saying if we do phase 2 and 3, the mobilization costs will be reduced?
We could, yeah, I believe so, because you'd only have one firm that you'd have to deal with mobilizing once. They would, I mean, if you think about it on their side of the, on their side of the fence, they only have to park labor for, you know, 8 months instead of 2 separate times. And if you separate it, they're gonna view it separately.
Right. So Kirsten, this is almost September here.
I know.
Let's say the board said yes. Walk us through a timeline.
Well, let's assume that you guys like the idea of one or both phases going forward. It would take at least a month for me to get ready to go out to bid. And then another month, well, maybe not a month, but maybe pretty close to a month. And then another month for us to, you know, have it in circulation and have meetings and walkthroughs and what have you, in order to properly give the public the time to do what they need to do. So that's 8 weeks. And then once you pick a contractor, you have to order equipment, which we can kind of reverse engineer, especially the bigger pieces of equipment. You'll notice in the budget, still recommending that you all purchase those, and we could chew up that delivery horizon by committing to it, say, and then ordering the equipment on October 1st and picking a contractor on November 1st. You could save yourself some time that way.
So by the time they gear up and actually do the work, it'd be 2021.
Yeah, I would say it'd be pretty much December, January. And some of the work, like the air handling, the makeup air unit could be done in December, January. It's the chiller wouldn't be able to be set until the frost came off.
So we are looking truly good.
Yeah.
I thought that's what you were
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. And that's just a function of what day it is on the calendar.
But how will that impact?
I mean, if we were sitting here in April, we could be conceivably starting this project at this time of
How
year.
would that address the issue Pierre has about potential cold winter and freezing?
You can use antifreeze and prevent having any greater breakage.
Yes.
That would be a Band-Aid, but the thing is that the piping probably should just be done. And get it out from under the ground to stop what's happening.
So that could take place this fall?
Yeah, you could pull the trigger on that quickly.
Okay. Just trying to get a timeline how we
Yeah.
do this.
Well, especially because his idea of sediment going through it, especially under pressure, is wearing down, you know, the pipes on the inside.
What I can get back to you, Chet, and you can share with the board is what I think a delivery, say you had stuff put together today, what it would look like if you ordered a chiller, when would it get here?
Yeah, that would be very helpful, I think, for us more.
I can revisit all that stuff for you.
Well, unless we have a special meeting, realistically, the board cannot authorize even beginning this process until September 15th. So that's another 3 weeks from now.
You can always hold a special
Yeah, I'm
meeting.
saying, without a special meeting, I'm saying time is starting to be faster. So we actually could, in one of our budget sessions, just piggyback on a regular meeting.
Exactly.
Just to meet the timeline, I think we may have to.
Right, but we're gonna have to look at the finances
Yeah,
to see
yeah.
how this can be done.
Yes.
You know, it really is gonna be, we're gonna bond or what we're gonna do, you know? So I don't think we can take it all from the DTR.
I'll,
Yeah, I'll bring John in to talk about that.
yeah, John and
John would hang us all.
Jen, we'd have to meet to talk about that idea, but financing is absolutely
Yeah.
part of it. But-
Should be looking at.
But I do remember Mr. Peacock actually recommending that we look at that option because of our great cash situation.
We have our next budget meeting, September 4th. That's in 2 weeks. So maybe we can pull some of
We
this
can try to get
information
some more
together
information.
and, you know, if we see the need for a special meeting on that
We
day,
can
I
always decide,
suggest.
yeah. We can decide one quickly.
Okay.
September 4th is a Friday. I'm would be available by Zoom that day.
That's
I'm
fine.
traveling that
Do you
day.
have a good connection?
'Cause you
I don't
we
know,
have-
because I'm gonna be driving, but if I had to pull over, I would.
Yeah, we're getting used to Zoom.
Yeah. Getting used to a lot
Not
of
that I
things.
wanted to.
Getting used to a lot
Well, I
of
think
things.
it'd be helpful if you and or Gary together could come up with a firm proposal. I mean, you've heard the comments from the commissioners. I think
Mhm.
there's consensus to go forward.
Yeah.
So really need some specific information.
Sure.
Especially concerning piping.
And then at that point, we could even have a special meeting right after that or something.
I can certainly have that information for you in time for that next budget discussion. I say that now that I'm now watching myself shoot myself in the
Any
foot.
other questions or statements? Go ahead, Commissioner Answer.
Pricing, do you anticipate a significant change from what we had before? It's
The numbers
still
you're
in the
looking at,
ballpark type
the
of-
numbers you're looking at, I'm,
Well, there weren't any numbers
there's-
in this thing.
there weren't,
There should have been.
yeah, there
I
should,
noticed, I think there's a page missing, the budget. I think,
Yeah, I didn't-
I don't
broke
have
this
any.
down, I think this is 2 to 3, I think we're missing the budget page, but I can, it's the same as, we'll email you the budget page.
Yeah.
I just looked at 2, there should have been, I think it's my fault when I printed out, you must have left the budget page out.
there was three files I sent you, well, maybe 4, a budget, and then the
Yeah,
summary and
I
phase
think
2 and
we-
phase 3.
So the numbers are on your schedule though that you did?
Yeah, that hasn't changed.
That's what
Yeah,
But no, but there's a
On this-
breakdown of that.
on this,
Oh.
on Chet's memo.
Well, I'll just resend a memo
Yeah.
from July.
Okay. It's the July memo is pretty true.
There were 3 or 4.
I just wanted to know if there was any significant change.
No, and in fact, I'm hoping, Commissioner, to depending on what your position is, whether you'd rather do it all at once and be done with it, or break it into 2 sections. I'm hoping I can kind of change get some of the costs down based upon the fact that in other words, you wouldn't have to have the labor costs that are built into both of those both times, because you're just gonna be here at once. There's a lot of assimilation we can do in terms of reducing maybe labor costs, mobilization costs, equipment costs, so on and so forth.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is.
But, I definitely think we need to move forward immediately for the piping, because we need that irregardless.
He's gonna put that together, she's gonna give us some more numbers already, she said, so yes, we are, I think you're
I'll
right.
play it safe. We assume that we'll have a special meeting at the end of the budget meeting on September 4th.
Yes.
If we don't have anything, we can always cancel it. But if 3 of you could stay afterwards and sign a meeting request,
That's a good idea.
just to play it safe.
Yeah.
That way we don't have to track you down and y'all can.
That is the Friday of Labor Day weekend. I just want to make you all
We
aware.
know that.
Okay.
We've had that
That
discussion.
budget meeting.
I'm headed to see my husband's family. So, and we're gonna drop Olivia, my daughter, at school and then drive straight there.
You may be taking her with you.
No, she's going. Oh, she's going. If I have to build her a house myself, she's going.
Was there a bit of tone in that answer?
This is, you'll recall my remorse last year at
Can
this
you
time.
and Gary be ready for the 4th? So if we could have it even before then, obviously, so we could
Yeah.
look at it.
Sure,
That'd be great. So as soon
Sure.
as you could put together a firm plan.
Sure.
proposal.
no problem.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you, Kristen.
Laura,
Okay.
could you give us a form for special meetings? Or just bring it in here?
Thanks, everyone.
That brings us, thank you very much.
Have a nice
Thank
day.
you. Yes,
Safe
thanks for
travels.
coming out here. So we're looking at review of revenues and expenditures.
I just put that on the agenda. I didn't know how long the meeting would last. Do you have any questions? Obviously, at this time, I thought at some point, I thought by now the state would have some revenue sharing, but they haven't. They canceled that meeting. So obviously, I don't have anything.
All right, do we have any other future budget work or anything you want to wait and do other dates?
Well, I think we already have a pretty full plan on the 4th now to talk about this.
It's gonna be a big increase.
And I'll have John look at finance options.
All right.
And maybe at the 4th, outside of the courts, I believe we had everyone present, right? Jen, we haven't missed anyone, have we?
I don't think you wanted to hear, I think you weren't gonna have Ron come, because that's just part of his budget,
April.
so
No,
I don't
and
see anything.
April's modified her, she's not ready yet.
Okay.
And we agreed there was no reason for the health department, right?
No,
There
the
are
health
no
department, yep, it's, Peachy had contacted Doty. The number that was first given to me prior to giving it to you was not 1%. Our number is actually 2.52% increase. Doty's, in her numbers, looks at it as 2.86. So the difference is she's looking at her calendar year from October 1st to September. We're looking January to February. So for her, she's saying 2.86. For us, it's 2.52. So there's your savings a little bit. But
And on the courts, they're trying to set up a meeting. I think Melinda and Will, you were copying an email on that Zoom.
I haven't seen it on the date
But
yet.
no, they have not. They just sent out the survey on
Yeah.
dates. I've not had a date picked yet. So but I think on the 4th, you could start focusing on some of these projects here.
Right.
I'll have John talk about finance options.
Make some final decisions.
And then I'll just I'll put 10 a.m. or at the end of the budget meeting. That way we're completely safe.
Did we finalize, discussion on dam authority and dam, expenses? That was on our initial list, that we had to budget for some.
I don't think they have finalized anything, have they? I haven't received anything from them with we did ask them to come up with a list of priorities.
Yeah, okay.
And I think, they have not, I think in the budget, Jen, you put for the utilities and the normal
yep, I
costs.
did the normal 8,100 to come from the
Yeah, so that part
board.
is there, and I thought you
in
said
there.
that once they have a special request, they would come back to the board.
They haven't met yet this year, right?
They haven't been in quite a while.
That's one of Mr. Polk's complaints.
Yeah, they're having trouble getting quorums at their meetings.
So then that would bring us to public comment. If there's any public comment, please call 231-256-8109, 231-256-8109. And while we're waiting for any calls, I would just make a comment that I've received emails concerning Leland Public School, and they're gonna go basically virtual for the first semester. You know, and the students are very concerned about having internet. So they're wondering if, Leland's gonna charge for data, they're using data, it's $36 per student that they were asking the parents to pay for, and I think it's a month, per month.
For a hotspot, so the
Yeah,
students
well,
can.
for that amount of data that they're gonna use to send the information out or something. I'm not exactly sure what the costs are, but they were asking me as a commissioner, what can the county do to help them out? You know, what are we doing for internet? What are we doing to try to help the students of Leelanau County, you know, that are not gonna have to be home and have to be on the internet? So go ahead.
My answer to that is, we are attempting to improve the tower sites so that the cell phone providers, that using the LTE data that they currently have available, will be able to, people will be able to use that. Is it gonna be as fast as, Charter? No. But they will be able to do normal schoolwork type of stuff. You can do the YouTube type quality video, and that's about it.
By the week after next?
Using LTE.
Yeah, that's the problem.
By the week after
What do we do by
next?
next week? Is the-
Right, that's the problem.
That's the problem. If you live in an area where you don't have cell phone coverage today,
Okay.
until we fix that, they're gonna be stuck with that.
I know you guys are having a nice conversation, but Commissioner Lautner did want to speak.
I just had a question, is the school, they're asking or they're requiring the students to pay for it?
I think the way I read the email, it was requiring it, if you're going to use, they're gonna give them like a Kindle or something, an iPad, and if they're gonna put a data in it, they're gonna have to pay $36 a month. The school, didn't sound like the school was paying for it.
Part of it though, the governor just signed a bill yesterday giving additional funds to schools to deal with these issues. So it may be, I'm not saying it may be coming.
Yeah, that's right.
But there's a significant amount of the federal CARES money they allocated to the school district to help them deal with these type of issues.
Commissioner West.
Did you, that's what I was asking Chet if we knew exactly what the governor did yesterday on that. Because it was my understanding that that was a part of that package.
Yeah, the information I got from Sandy about that, so.
Okay.
So that, they say whatever we can do to help.
Let's keep doing it.
Yes, Commissioner Sotis Little.
Yes, thank you. One thing that we can definitely do, the contracts for the ISPs to be on the towers kind of has drug out all summer. And I think we can move on those quickly as possible. Make sure those are done because they can get on those towers and start placing equipment. We do have equipment from one of the ISPs. It's on the Maple City Tower. But, you know, we know that Aspen's Wireless is hanging, Agra Valley, and also Cherry Capital wanted to be on some. So let's get them on the towers because then we can do an awful lot in covering some of these areas with fixed wireless in the interim while, you know, other options. The only problem with hotspots is it's very expensive. So.
Well, here's just an idea. We could, for those people that don't have internet, we're not letting the public use the room downstairs, the community room. We could reserve it, it's 10-person capacity, but if they want to come during the day, use the community room, we could set it aside for students that don't have access.
Can't the school do that?
They're not open.
Well,
Schools are not open.
but
That's it.
they're saying we're giving the students no option that,
I believe there's virtual.
zero
only.
option.
April Massage just told me, because her kids go to Leland, they were just notified that it's virtual only.
Right, that's
Okay,
what
so
I
I agree, whatever we can do.
I
but
just
we
think it's
don't-
an
This is
idea.
one school, and we've got,
Well, we'd open it for any student.
any student.
Yeah, not just
And I don't know
Leland.
what Traverse City Public Schools is going to do either, so,
They have 3 different options.
okay, for sure?
Yes,
Okay,
it's in today's paper.
oh, okay,
But it could be St. Mary's, it could be someone,
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm saying we could reserve the room downstairs, the community room. We're blocking it off anyway. And open it for students to come if they wish. We have Wi-Fi down there. Just an idea.
Commissioner Answer.
Just as we could put a Wi-Fi antenna out here underneath our overhang to cover the parking lot, the schools could do the same thing. Even if the building's not open, they could have internet access because all the schools are already have internet access. And they could put in a Wi-Fi antenna to broadcast to the parking lot. So anybody could pull up into the parking lot and have internet access if they don't have it at home.
I think the challenge is trying to do homework in the car.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
just
a
saying.
challenge.
I know it's a solution, but it's,
It's a
I'm just saying.
challenge.
Oh,
right.
Sure.
All right, any other comments, Commissioner comments?
let me, would there be any concerns if we were to do that downstairs?
I just think that we should
Go ahead.
think about it. I mean, you got a lot of, you still have the same issues of masks in the hallways and only one person in a restroom and lunch.
They would have to,
There's a
abide
lot
by all the
to, a lot
guidelines,
to
but
consider, yeah, in which 10.
it'll be
And-
first come, first served at that.
Okay.
I mean,
I
I don't want to
feel-
offer
Somebody
it,
almost have to monitor it.
well, I would not offer it unless if there's concern,
Yeah.
but if there is
Or just,
I'd like to at least
I just wanted
notify
to-
parents that there's at least an option
yeah, just
for those that are
try
really
to-
struggling.
I'm just trying
I
to
don't
think
think
of
we'll
all,
decide that
everything
here.
before we have a problem, try to think of
Well,
everything we
let's think about
try
it.
to cover
Yeah,
in the meet, before it becomes an issue.
Commissioner Answer.
I know some other school districts, if the home does not have internet access, they are providing hotspots to those students. They have so much data that they can use for homework, and it only connects to the school system, so they can't be using it for anything else. And that's how, yes, hotspot data is expensive, but if you limit it to only schoolwork, they can do that. And I know some schools that are virtual only, that's what they're doing. They give the students that don't have internet access at home the LTE hotspots, and that's what they're using.
And that may be part of the new federal.
Commissioner Wessel.
Who contacted you, Will?
It was.
Families?
It was a family that has.
I
three students
suggest that Chet contact Stephanie at Leland and and Casey at Suttons Bay and see if they need help from
Yeah,
us.
I'd be glad to do that, see what their plans are.
Right.
With this new money, that may have changed.
Well, then tell them what you're thinking about the conference room and see if they can do that same thing. If they can't, maybe they can. Commissioner Rushton.
And I was gonna make the suggestion, in each one of those districts to look at their own townships. I know down in our township, we have quite a good-sized meeting room. There's Wi-Fi available there. So I think that, you know, there could be a solution closer to home for each of the students. And my second point is, I was under the understanding that the CARES Act was providing for these hotspots. Under the CARES Act, that it was being provided for under the CARES Act, so.
We just need some answers. No, I mean, a local restaurant that's not using their dining room during the daytime hours might open their dining room. It's a great opportunity.
There's a lot of different
for community
scenarios.
to come forward too. And
Well, let me do a little more research, talk to
Yeah.
superintendents.
Right. I mean, I'm not opposed to opening that up, you know,
Oh, I'm
but
not
I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, that's good.
But this is a great conversation. I mean, I thought that was a good, good email that was giving me information that we need to think about, and because we definitely don't want our students to get any
Are
farther
you
behind.
sure,
than they
and
have.
are you sure they're being charged this rate? Then
That's
maybe
what we
what the
need to
schools
find
are being charged,
Right.
maybe they're picking up those
Well,
costs.
the way I read it,
Yeah.
they were gonna have to pay, each student would have to pay the $36.
But it could be, I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
It may be the cost of school $36.
Yeah.
And they may not be passing it on though.
Yeah, okay. That
Because,
could be.
Yeah,
it changes constantly, so let's get some more information.
Okay, well, great. Any other comments or anything? All right, then I would say this meeting is ended.
And for clarification, the next budget board meeting is September 4th at 9 a.m.
Yes. Followed by potentially a special